Good evening, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome.
Hello, I am Chloe, formerly your GM, now your, I suppose, host of our She's the Ancient wrap-up. Last week we finished playing our game of She's the Ancient, which is, of course, a gender-bent Curse of Strahd module. And we're going to take some time, just relax, and talk about our characters, answer questions we have, take questions from the audience. I guess for the last time, would you starting with Ben, do you want to introduce yourself and the character you played?
Hi, everybody. Ben Ravensdale. I played Grizzly Batums in this campaign, the giant bat person barbarian, with more or less good intentions, but not always great judgment.
Um, hey everyone, I'm Lupine. I played everybody's favorite spicy little Rodino. That sort of maybe a little bit got the party just a little bit got the party into trouble sometimes.
Hmm. Only a little bit.
Yeah.
My name is Mike. I played Trier, the fairy druid of the Circle of Stars, or I like to call the anxiety druid because, well, this group drove his anxiety levels to the extreme until he started thinking like them. So there you have it.
Oh yeah, Luke, fine. Can we turn you up on audio? I actually,
I can do that. Yeah, give me one sec. Let me just.
yeah, I actually turned you up on my personal Discord.
That's what I did too.
Okay.
Hopefully that's better. Please let me know if there are any other audio tweaks that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I was going to start off the conversation by, talking about how this game got started in the first place. Let me think. I think like I had the idea for running this, I think around last last October actually, right around Halloween. You know, like I had left a job where I that took up a lot of evening time and I was like, you know what? I got time on my hands. I want to try something new. For me, Curse of Strahd is, it's not a campaign I've played, but back in the Adventurers League days, Adventurers League being like the public D&D setting, um, I did do some chapters, some assorted chapters of Curse of Strahd. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, oh, right. And this was actually when I started playing 5e and really role-playing games for the first time. So Curse of
Wow.
Strahd was never, yeah. I think I played one game of like 3.5 and one game of 4e before that, but that was the first time I really actually played a 5e game. Yeah, so I think actually I wanted to segue this. So like I guess multi-part question, like what was all of your experience with Curse of Strahd going into this? And yeah, we'll start there.
We'll just do the standard talking order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or or speak up
Okay.
if you just want to jump in.
I had a fair amount of exposure to Strahd and everything like that. I'm 40, so I've been around a bit, and I've been playing D&D in some capacity since I was basically 10. So when the original Ravenloft module came out, that was right around the time that I started playing. I don't remember if it was just before or just after, but like I had the book at home when I was a kid, and I just remember always kind of looking at it and wanting to run it and stuff like that. Read the novels, yada yada yada. Um, so always been a big fan of Ravenloft, but I never played it until Curse of Strahd came out, and I looked at running it, so I'd kind of gone through the module really loosely. That didn't pan out, so I played a couple campaigns that didn't pan out. We got like you know a quarter of the way, a third of the way through it, um, and then this came along, and it sounded like a great opportunity, so I jumped right on it because I was like, must have Strahd.
Hmm.
So yeah.
I uh had no experience with Strahd. I mean, I knew it existed. um,
Didn't you say you were
I
listening to a podcast?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast that they played through it, and they had a lot of fun, and it sounded like a lot of fun. Um, and then I watched some actual plays, or some YouTube videos and stuff, some people play it, and uh, so it was really, I don't know, it seemed really fun. Everybody made it seem like, and I really like, I knew sort of that it was based in this like sort of parallel world to our own, and like it's got this sort of parallel even to the D&D world kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
going on. And I don't know, it just sounded really cool. And yeah, so I was excited to try it on for size.
Yeah, well, much like Ben, I've been gaming for a long time, and this is my 40th year for gaming. So, but I like him. I had also bought the original box set for second edition and got to read it and loved it. But no group I had would ever play it or do that. And throughout the 90s, throughout my 20s and early 30s, no one touched that product. And it's kind of a bummer because the original is really deep and interesting for especially for second edition. It was really this thing out of its league, out of everyone else's league, and so only a few people really played it or talked about it. And when it was released for 5th edition, I was helping DM for Adventures League at a local store, and the person in charge of us all said they wanted to run it as a DM only game. So we ran it on an off night instead of the center Wednesday night games. We ran stuff for people. So only the local DMs were playing it. And mind you, that's 8 people. So she ran an 8-person Strahd game, and we we ran rough battle with that module. I swear it was not pleasant. You have 8 experienced DMs. Just I feel bad for her sometimes still, but she put a lot of crap and she did beat the hell out of us at the end. But we pretty much looted the entire module, and being the DMs we were. I got to play it again during the pandemic when a friend of mine needed a person to sub in, and I kind of help his players understand the setting. It was. So I played for about 15 sessions, and it was just too much on me to like literally pull people by the nose to get them to do
Mm-hmm.
things, and I left leaving that. So when the invite came to do this, I was like, "Oh, Strahd's neat." And you mentioned it was She as the Ancient. I had no clue. I'd never heard about that. So of course I went and read up on it. You mentioned. I'm like, this is going to be interesting. I can't wait to see this. So of course I was ready to go and give it a try again. And I think that was the hardest part was having played it before all the way through and finding all the nooks and crannies. Like, well, okay, this is going to be a stretch for all of my DMing and player ability to not point my nose in certain directions. So, but it was great to get a chance to do this again in a different way.
I also like that's also part of the reason I did She is the Ancient specifically, since there are some notable changes. I see your question, Rachel. But sort of Sullied has sent in a question with Malevolence. I don't know what Malevolence adds for us for answering questions. I guess share your deepest, darkest secrets as part of answering. What was the biggest moral conundrum this season?
Is that a oriented question, or is that a DM oriented question? Because that could be
Actually,
very
I guess
different
that's
depending on the perspective.
true. Do I have a DM moral conundrum? I mean, the way I tend to run games, at least, is I have my characters and I have like their desires and things they want, and I'm like let's have these players pinball around. But yes, players, what were the biggest moral conundrums that your characters run into?
I mean, I think for Grizzly, it was. I think for Grizzly it was probably Rahadin. Because, Grizzly as a character is just very much like he's kind of like a slightly more feral golden retriever in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Like, he wants to be friends if you want to be friends, but if you want to fight, he's more than happy to fight, and he doesn't necessarily hate you after you fight. And so Rahadin was this weird kind of like antagonistic, but also somewhat sympathetic, like yeah, I do Strahd's bidding, and I devote everything to Strahd, but I think there was a point where I felt like it was prudent to ask Rahadin whether or not Strahd had ever like expressed appreciation for Rahadin, or like ever said that that she loved her or whatever. And Rahadin kind of had this reaction of like, all right, we're done talking now, which was very
Hmm.
very telling. And then later on, we kind of like ran into her into the Amber Temple, and we were just like, okay, get her, and we killed her because we didn't really talk about what the expected outcome was. It was just, hey, this person is dangerous. We need to get her before she gets us. And so yeah, I think that was probably the biggest moral conundrum for Grizzly. Was like, wait a second, did we just do the right thing? I don't think we just did the right thing. But I mean that kind of got resolved with the way the campaign ended. So
Hmm.
so that's Grizzly.
I don't know, any big moral conundrums for Dina or Triar?
Well,
If I can add to what
Mhm.
Ben was saying, I was trying to show Tryar's frustration with the setting because he would make mistakes. He's trying to be a good person. He is a good person by alignment and by how he was acting, but the moral depravity of the way the setting works was starting to key on him. That's why the scene with Rahadin, he was just get her, get her, get her,
Yeah.
and I was hoping that would catch on. I don't know if it actually did it instantly, but he was just affected by the thing, and when it all broke down, he realized what he had done, and it hurt him. But he did it again in the catacombs to that
With,
vampire. No provocation, did it,
Yeah.
and that was to show his frustration and the setting weighing on him so much. Not really a conundrum, but it was hard for me to pull that off properly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Lupine.
Oh, the biggest thing that immediately came to mind was Strahd. Because we sort of had that idea that maybe we could, and we did actually end up, I don't know, redeeming her, sort of.
Hmm.
There's some question about whether it's stock or not, but that was always a thing, uh, for Dina, and sort of tying into that, and along with it, Dina sort of saw Strahd as herself, like, because Dina was always a loner, you know, living alone in the forest. I did come up with a backstory for her, although I don't think I ever told anyone. Dina was basically kicked out of her village. Like, I had this concept of forest gnomes kind of living in little villages, just kind of like little enclaves in the forest, and everybody, sort of has their place and does their part, and the you know the tasks are divided by gender, but they are very rote and divided by, like, someone does something, and you do this thing, and that's what you do. And Dina didn't like that, and she sort of rebelled against this idea that she could do one thing, and it didn't matter how good she was at it, because she would always do it. And she would always be expected to do that one thing. And so she sort of rebelled against this, and her parents did not approve. And so she effectively got kicked out. And so Dina was a loner, and that was so that's part of the I guess conundrum is that Dina was now uh, you know with these people who were like friends, and there's always a question of, are they actually friends or are they not friends? Are they going to stab me if I turn around too fast? And so there was that, and then there was also like uh, Dina felt a very uh, sort of like a kinship with Strahd about how she reacted to what she saw as betrayal,
Mm-hmm.
and how she reacted to having power and stuff like that. And I mean, Dina's alignment is chaos, pure and simple, just chaos. And I'm not a huge fan of alignments in D&D anyway, but so it was sort of like a question of, do you go off and do what you want to do, or do you stay with these people because uh, they might help you accomplish tasks that you want to accomplish? And so the big that was a pretty big sort of weighing the options every time. Dina wasn't really sure what exactly she wanted to do, and every time we went into combat, I sort of had that thought to myself, that little, you know, uh, powwow with myself, just like session of like, so what happens if this happens? Am I going to betray the party? She didn't look at it necessarily as betrayal, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that people would see it as betrayal. So, or am I going to like stick with them? And when do I risk my own health and to like protect them and stuff like that? So
Yeah, I think of the scene in the Abbey where you went to shoot the abyss,
mm-hmm.
and there was that moment in the group where it was like everyone's like, "Oh shit, okay," and but is this person turning on us? Think about it in character. What are we gonna do? And it wasn't easy. It was a scary moment to watch Dina make that choice, and can't have this happen. And so it was real tense, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, yeah, and I really like, I think that was one of the biggest moments for Dina, was when people when y'all were like, okay, yeah, let's nerf her, let's get rid of her.
Oh, the abbess. She's
Mm-hmm.
terrible.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Let me answer Rachel. I think I'll answer your question about gender flip and Strahd, and then I think your next question is a good question for the players. All right. So gender flipping Strahd. There are a couple of things going on. I think one is that the relationship between, like male Strahd and Arena is definitely echoing lots of real world, like toxic masculinity and abuse towards women.
Super creepy.
Yeah, and I feel like having a female Strahd helps. Again, female Strahd is still abusive, like still toxic, but it takes away from broader cultural, these broader cultural norms of like the ways women are treated. And then you get to just focus on the monstrosity of Strahd's actions in and of themselves. I think there are also some parallels with siblings, but I'll get to that later. Yeah, so I think gender flipping Strahd didn't have the biggest impact on the individual, on like the big story beats, but it definitely has a big impact on those smaller character interactions because, whether or not D&D is a world that doesn't care about gender, we come from a world that very much cares about gender. And this creates a new slate to work from and, view Strahd with different eyes, especially because a lot of people know the Curse of Strahd story and have read that story. Yes, there's more I want to go into, but I think let's see. Actually, maybe I will. Yeah, players. So, what's the thing that you come up with for your character that you never got to bring up? I actually have an answer for some of the NPCs, but I think players should answer first.
For Grizzly, I think I made little allusions here and there to a lot of his backstory stuff. I think back in the very beginning, I gave a quick gloss over of the fact that like his little clan tribe, whatever you want to call them, of like bat people was raised by this like sort of like in a symbiotic relationship thing with a little goblin tribe that had been enslaved by a bunch of hobgoblins and pressed into like
Mm-hmm.
becoming soldiers and yada yada. And that was something that he like wanted to get back to and deal with, but it was like I think it was just in passing. Um, Although he did make a lot of reference to various things that his smarter goblin friends, as he liked to call them,
Mm-hmm.
told him throughout the game. So that's probably about the only thing. For the most part, he was pretty open book. So
There was a bit earlier on where I did think about like, do I want to make this campaign more backstory heavy? But I think ultimately I decided that there was enough in the campaign itself and enough interactions coming from these characters being in this new setting that I was like, I feel like it might take away from some of the core dramatic ideas.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Trier?
Um, you touched on that briefly, and I didn't get to talk about it much, but his half dragon heritage, which is alluded to. One of the feats I took was for the chromatic dragon or the metallic dragon feat, and so he had metallic dragon wings. But we never really talked about that. I never got a chance to bring it up, and I know you alluded to it by mentioning his great grandfather being in Barovia at one time, and we never got to do anything with that either, unfortunately. But that it wasn't too much. I think it was just a side feature for me. The fact is, I think I never got to use that feat, not once. Yeah, I never used the metallic wings feature once. At least that I can remember.
What does it do?
It basically adds your proficiency bonus to someone next as a reaction. Add your proficiency bonus to the person next to you's AC within 5 feet, if they were hit.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, you had other reaction stuff to do. Like you had your woe and your wheel thing and stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
that got,
So
yeah, I got that feat. I started with the first level with that thing,
yeah,
and I never really used it. And then I got the cosmic omen thing, and that kind of it was forefront for reactions.
yeah. But I think Trier didn't do a lot of melee combat early on. I think he stayed at range with like his guiding bolts and his starry form and stuff like that. So like, it's tough to use those kinds of like interpose features with the range focus. So yeah, I wish I'd known you had that because I definitely could have saved Grizzly some damage in a couple of fights.
Well, at second level, ooh, it's or third level, it's like, ooh, it's a +2 to someone's AC. But if I'm in the middle of combat, I had like half of your hit points, so
Yeah, exactly.
it didn't really pan out.
It wasn't worth the risk.
I didn't focus on it. If I'd have focused more on that aspect, it probably been much better. But it was more of a feel thing, and it's part of the things that gave me cure light wounds, which I knew we would need. So it gave it to me as a spell that I could use
Oh,
once per
nice.
day, and then add it to other things. So that was part of the balance. Like I have this cool extra reaction thing, but the cure light wounds is actually kind of more important in the long run.
Right.
So, like, I sort of had a question for
Ooh.
for Mike and Ben. Because I know that I sort of had a like something that actually helped me decide what Dina was gonna do is I sort of had a goal in mind. If that makes sense. Dina wanted to go home. She just like, and not home obviously because I just told you she got kicked out of her village. But she wanted to go home to the forest, and I I think I alluded to this with Velisovich and stuff like that. Like, come meet me in the forest. I want to go run in the forest. And so anyway, I kept that in mind, like, whenever I wasn't sure what to do next. I was like, well, Dina wants to do this, or she wants this to be the goal that she gets to. So I'm just wondering if you guys, either or both, had sort of the goal in mind for Grizzly or Try, or something you wanted to, like, get to.
I mean, outside of getting home, because the idea of Barovia is a horrible thing to Fae, right? You saw what it did to the Babas and what it was doing to Trior over time. And so his fear of wanting to get home, he didn't want to turn it to them because it was awful. And that kind of did what dark nature does to fairies. And so that's why, again, he was kind of mentally falling apart towards the end because he couldn't handle it anymore. And so he was trying to find pieces of happiness. Even the idea of redeeming Strahd gave him hope. Let's face it, Barovia is a very hopeless place. And you guys gave him hope. That idea gave him hope that maybe we can get out all this alive and not to kill anybody, and we can do this right, maybe save someone too. That's at his core what he is. And so that's kind of what he held on to for so long. I mean, it took a while to figure that out because he was just terrified when he met the two of you.
Yeah. We're pretty scary.
Grizzly gets
No,
out
it
a
was
lot.
it was the wolves. You were the least scary of the wolves. Versus you guys were the wolves. You were the least scariest.
I forgot about the wolves. That was early on. I mean, I specifically wrote Grizzly as a character to be fairly simplistic. Like, one of the things I really didn't want to do, because I DM so much and everything like that I did not want to be the decision maker of the group. So I was like, I'm going to play Grizzly. He is a golden retriever with big fangs, and that's about the extent of his personality. And so for that reason, he worked as written. But I mean, the extent of his goal was, I mean, if you find people who are nice to you, take care of them. So that was pretty much the extent of it. Although when they stole his pickled ghoul's tongues early on, there was a brief moment where he wondered if they were really being nice to him, but he forgot about that quickly enough. So
Yeah, that was not a thing I expected the players to do. Among other things I didn't expect the players to do.
What? No.
Well, actually, yes. We should actually, what questions do you have for each other or me? Since, Lupine brought up some questions.
I have questions. I wrote questions. I did the homework.
Let me get my homework out. Hold on.
Okay. Well, that one's for Gal, but she's not here. Oh, I've got a lot of...
Should listen.
All right, I'm gonna go one for Trior specifically, and then one for Dina specifically. Dina.
Mm-hmm.
I just said I was gonna do it in one order, and then completely flipped it. So just go with it.
Okay.
Dina, Lupine, what did Dina do with the party loot that she walked off with? Because don't think I didn't notice.
Oh. So the thing about the loot is that she really was into little shiny things, but not because they had inherent value, if that makes sense. So she was just kind of like Ooh, look, shiny things. So what I'm basically saying is that I didn't think about it. um,
So you're saying there's a little forest gnome somewhere with a dragon hoard worth of treasure in a tree, just hanging out.
so I kind of I kept track of it, but I kind of figured that I wouldn't be able to carry it all. So I kind of thought we were. I don't know.
Didn't we
I'm
get a
not
bag of
sure.
holding though?
Did
I
we
thought
get one?
I thought we got a bag of holding that you ended up with, and that's
I
how
don't
we were.
remember if
I thought that's how we were holding all the loot. Was we found a bag of holding and we were like, okay, Dina can hold on to this.
I thought Chloe ruled that the gold didn't actually weigh anything.
yeah, I think like I simplified it because you didn't. I don't believe you had a bag of holding. There are
Oh,
definitely opportunities to like run off with more gold. I was like, okay, this is how much gold you can have without a bag of holding, and I imagine that
Yeah.
at some extent it was distributed between the party.
Oh, okay.
Was there? Maybe
Betty
maybe
says
that
she
that was
remembers a
one.
bag of holding.
Maybe that was one of the Baba Green Teeth items.
I think it was. I feel like it was.
I mean, either way, you spend a lot of it at the end, but definitely Dina at least has treasure from the crypt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Betty
I
Betty also says that she remembers a bag of holding. So,
yeah.
and it's not like I'd help these people. Betty says.
It's true.
Right?
Betty's, I think,
Betty
chief malevolence
would
contributor.
not help us if we
No.
were on
No.
fire. She'd not pick on us. But no, I think she'd actually pick on us if she wanted to. But I guess I don't know. So here's where I and the character are very different because I don't care. Like I just I would give you all the loot if uh Dina had done that, but I did but Dina would not do that because but again, not because there's inherent value in it or anything, it's just because it's shiny. So, yeah, I think somewhere I think because we didn't talk about it, I think somewhere there's a just forest gnome hanging out. I mean, uh, Dina would be happy to spend it on you, and I did think I did decide that Dina would probably check in on you, both of you, at some point. Um, because you're in like this world, right? You're not going to another dimension or something.
I don't think it
I
was
don't
ever
know.
explicitly determined where Grizzly was from.
Okay.
Um, I hadn't really, because I mean, technically Ravenloft can pull from all the different planes of existence. So
I remember you and I, Grizzly, came from the same place, though. I think.
At least
I
you're
don't
in the same
remember.
place. That's the first episode. I
Because
think
because
you're
Dina
in
found
the same
Grizzly
place.
being like attacked by goblins or something, and she helped him get away from the goblins. I don't, something like that.
There's some talk about backstory. I remember early on for how the characters got together,
Yeah, because we were
and I
like,
don't know that we ever
why
settled
would
in
we
on
be
it
together? Yeah.
because honestly, at some level, it's not like it wasn't going to be the most important thing for the adventure.
yeah, exactly.
So let's just say it this way: if she could get to you, Dina would come check on you guys.
Well, you
Uh,
do know that we're meeting back at the same location in a year, so
Yeah, that's true as well. So, like, if you guys, if you looked like you needed something, or I don't know, you walked by like a shop in a town and looked in the window and you're like, oh, I really like that scarf, you'd find that scarf on your doorstep later.
I just rolled to see whether or not Grizzly remembers in a year, and I got a 5. So I don't think
That
Grizzly's going to
checks
be
out.
there. Okay, well, Trior, then, my question for you. What brand of antacids does Trior prefer to settle the stomach?
mushrooms, lots of mushrooms.
Okay. Is that to settle his stomach, or is that to just settle him?
Sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough.
That's a yes.
Um.
Uh,
Yeah.
All right, well, Mike, do you have any questions?
Well, I took Rachel's suggestion to heart and I wrote out 3 questions for everybody. Too bad Lindsay's not here. Let's see. So I have out of game stuff and in game stuff I think here too. So let me just start with Lupine. This is our first time gaming together, and it was a lot of fun to get a chance to play with you. Could you give me, and I guess everybody, a little design insight on the ideas behind Dina, and really specific goals you wanted to accomplish with the character inside of the system that you were able to do, or et cetera, et cetera. Since we talked about role playing stuff,
Um,
I'm always curious about design for characters.
I went into this knowing that I wanted to play. I didn't want to be too much of a Marisu, but I wanted Dina to be easy for me to play. So in other words, I wanted her to react to a lot of things the same way that I would react to a lot of things.
Okay.
Um, there are obviously some differences, like the whole gold thing, and then the letting thousands of people die thing. I would not be cool with that necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Dina was more cool with that. But like, so I definitely approached Dina at first with that concept in mind, the idea that I I didn't want to have to, and um I'll admit I was kind of in a rough-ish place at the time. Uh, so I was kind of looking for something that would be fun and not too hard, if that makes sense. So I definitely was looking forward to playing, and I've played D&D 5e for many years, so a lot of it is like second nature to me, or at least I know the basics and I read the rules and I get the specifics and stuff like that. So it's not one that I have to think about too much, and so I definitely went in with the idea of a character that was basically what I would do in that situation. Um, then I discovered that there were some things that we would do differently. Um,
Hmm.
like especially the whole like redeeming Strahd thing, and the choices that Dina made that like I would make differently. And but I mean I still I still enjoyed it. It's just that it turned out to be a little more complicated than I thought it was going to.
Okay.
But I really really love Dina, and I'm going to miss her. And I'm going to miss Trier and Grizzly and Gal too. And Aurelia. And I mean it was just fun to be, and I love me some chaos. So I definitely went hard on the what is the most batshit thing I can do in this situation. And I actually do you remember who actually messaged you during the finale, and I was like, I am fully prepared to do something stupid.
Yeah, I remember. I was like, all right,
So
we'll
because and
see.
I was specifically thinking about, remember when we fought that eye and I
Mm-hmm.
jumped in the eye to get the thing that was at the back of the eye, and like I jumped to the pupil to get the thing that I was specifically thinking about something like that.
We should have jumped into the flesh tube.
Yeah, except
IMO.
there wasn't anything to get down there. I don't know.
I mean, there wasn't, but you should have still jumped in.
I still could have done it, but I ended up being too busy trying to keep every keep the little things off Gal. So, but you know, it worked out that I didn't need to, but again, I was like I went very hard on the chaos because I was just like I want to have like fun swinging from chandeliers, running into danger, and that's why like I like when we met at when we saw the tavern, we found the tavern, and I just ran. That's why,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, what is the stupidest thing I can do? And I was like, run that way. So,
I get it. That makes sense. And the question for Ben, I got a couple about Grizzly, but I think one of the things I love about your character is, while Grizzly seems to be behind everyone, at least two steps behind everyone, Ben is right there with everybody and knows what's going on. But it requires some mental hoops to jump through to roleplay a character who's in that place while you, the player, are here and beyond. So, Ben, I just want to ask you, how kind of mental hoops were you jumping through to make Grizzly happen the way you wanted him to happen? Because it didn't seem easy to me to do all the malapropisms and the jokes and the puns, and I'm just curious how you got to that point and stayed at that point so consistently.
The funny thing is, I I actually went into it very much with the mentality of, okay, Grizzly would not be paying attention here. So I'm not going to pay attention to the fine details. Like, I use my general knowledge of Strahd as a module, my general knowledge of just the structure of D&D in general.
Mm-hmm.
And basically was like, I'll wing it for the most part. Pun absolutely intended because of the bat wings. But yeah, it was basically just um I did have to actively like kind of think about walking that fine line between my character's kind of dumb. I love him, but he's a little bit not very bright. Um, and wouldn't be paying like so much attention that he really knows all the details of what's going on. But at the same time, I don't want me as Ben to be a burden on the players. Be like, wait, catch me up again real quick, yada yada. Um, so it was kind of like a little bit of like half paying attention to the details and half remembering them, while also trying to think of the most well-intentioned misunderstanding of the situation I possibly could. I don't. One of my favorite movies of all times, and watching it again in retrospect, it's a little bit problematic, but it's Drop Dead Gorgeous. Um, and it's about this like Midwest like beauty pageant, like teen beauty pageant thing, and there are so many little like phrases that the characters say that are like, I don't think that's the way that saying goes. And I very much use that as like kind of inspiration for some of the stuff that Grizzly would just spout like as words of wisdom in the moment. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess there isn't really a concise answer. Um, if I was going to make it a concise answer, it was half paying attention, half just ad libbing it, and half, and I know that's too many halves, half just trying to have fun with it. So
Grizzly would use that many halves, though.
he would,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hi, Kashira. Grizzly is Rosen Island.
I don't think I've
know who
watched that
is.
movie.
It is legitimately funny. There are some it was made back in like 2004, 2005 ish, somewhere in that era. So there are definitely a few things that looking back on I'm like, ooh, I forgot that was in there. But it is a very entertaining movie. So
Well, all right. I think. Let's see. What do I want to bring up? Other stuff.
I do have a question for
Ro-
Chloe, if I may.
oh yeah, go ahead.
So obviously,
Mm-hmm.
the Betty White character from Golden Girls. Oh, gotcha. God, it's been a long time since I've watched Golden Girls. Yeah, I think that's actually not a bad analogy at all. Um, so Chloe, doing the conversion from traditional Curse of Strahd to She is the Ancient, which NPC changed the most, and which change was your favorite? So it's a two-part question. I lied. Two questions for Chloe.
Okay. Uh, Ismark is the one who changes the most
Ismark
because there's easy.
is Irina's brother, right?
Brother.
Okay.
Yeah, in the original Curse of Strahd, Ismark's is like this warrior guy who's like kind of weirdly controlling and kind of creepy. Um, is that one? Yeah, Clarice Ismark. So they do something very different. I think this is like the biggest change of any character. So Ismark is becomes Serena's little brother and is very cute and like friendly and helpful. So this basically sets up a big parallel because, and I've talked about it off stream, but you have Strahd and her younger, as again with the gender flipping, you get Strahd and her younger brother, Sergei. And then you get Irina and her younger brother, Ismark, as like these two contrasting relationships,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like definitely when it gives Irina like more ground to stand on instead of just because I feel like in Curse of Strahd she's very much like damsel in distress for a lot of it. Um, and Strahd's just like this generalized evil villain. However, she has a lot more opinions like on Strahd based on knowing what she did with Sergei. And I think like learning that is the thing that like because early on there's the part that's supposed to happen where Irina is like maybe Strahd's kind of okay and like this is and like knowing like that crime against a younger brother like that was the moment when Irina's like this is not going to work out."
I retract my previous statement.
Hmm? Oh,
That's
it's your statement.
no. I'm just saying that Irina is saying in that moment she retracts her
Oh
previous
yeah, yeah,
statement. Yeah.
absolutely.
So who is your favorite? Like, what was your favorite NPC change of the module?
I mean that's my favorite change. I mean, I guess it's the change of Ismark. Just also, I just really like Ismark. It's like this very like young idealistic kid, and I think with horror in general, it's important to have the bright spots, and Ismark is very much gets to be that bright spot and like be like a character who you're supposed to just like non-abashedly like and want to protect. Like base, I don't think there is really any character that serves that role in the base Curse of Strahd. And I think that's just that you get Irina's kind of that, but again, she's very much in the damsel in distress
Yeah.
position, which is a much different dynamic than like, a young character who is just, young and needs protecting on account of being a kid. And I think I like having this friendly character who, just wants to do his best.
Here's a follow up question, if I may, if you guys don't
Hmm.
mind. But that answer kind of made me think of something else. Do you think it would be more narratively interesting or of narrative interest to because one of the things in Curse of Strahd and in Barovia and Ravenloft in general is this idea of like souls being trapped and kind of like coming through reincarnation and everything like that. Do you think that there might be narrative value in tweaking it to say that Ismark is the reincarnation of Sergei?
I I think I could definitely work with that. I think generally as much as I talked about souls and other planes and things like that was in Dark Powers, that was never designed to be a key part of what was important about the characters. Like I very much de-emphasize Irina being just a reincarnation of Tatiana. Like I wanted
Yeah,
Irina to very much be her own person.
I noticed that actually, and I appreciated that choice.
Yeah, like Irina gets done pretty dirty in the original Curse of Strahd.
Yeah.
Um, like I remember a conversation early on, I think that Trier had with Irina about, Irina like starting to have these flashbacks and Trier really asserting that Irina was her own person. I think that was definitely a internal, like for me as the DM thinking about, okay, where's this NPC at? All right, I think that is going to push them to when there's a moment when they learn more about their past as Tatiana, that they will adhere to this identity as Irina. And
Nice.
again, having Ismark as the younger brother solidifies that her importance as who she is in the present even more. No, so I think there is definitely no, you could also play Curse of Strahd in this more D&D-esque way of like big stories and souls and great powers. But I think that wasn't the story that I quite wanted to do.
Awesome.
I do remember that when we found out the book that Ismark had was with dark magic, how every PC flipped the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
No, 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 no. We all did it. We all did it. And that's how much the character meant to us as both players and as characters, which I thought was great.
I like Ismark. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll segue this into probably another thing, like inspirations for this game. I think for me also coming up, like running this game, like horror, I think has never been the genre that I've been the most fluent in. So I think part of it for me was like, Curse of Strahd. I want to do something that's really classic D&D and also push myself as a storyteller to like see if I can get into this genre. Like there have definitely been horror stories that I've enjoyed, like the Silent Hill series of games, especially Silent Hill 2 with its overarching feel of just decay and just horrific things that's really based in personal trauma. Like reading the original Dracula novels, which I've tried to sneak in some references to, but also that feeling of just these characters dealing with something much bigger than them that they don't really understand and are trying to get a hold of. I think more recently, like there's a book I read called Mexican Gothic, which I highly recommend. It's very classic Gothic fiction, and it touches on. It's set in Mexico in the 1920s. It touches it has the line of these characters are horrible. Yes, there's weird magic stuff going on, but also the patriarch of the family is real into phrenology, which is like there's its own level of horror there that we can to talk about. Um, yeah, so I think for me, like I think those were some of like the biggest horror inspirations for me. Like I guess for all of you players, like what have been your biggest like horror touchstones for yourself and for building your characters?
Oh, Anybody else
I
want to
don't
tackle
know.
that one first?
I don't know. I think Pryor felt like Shaggy a lot, and from Scooby Doo, with and as that idea came along with the anxiety druid and being worried all the time, yeah, I drew a bit on Cheetah. Yeah, I drew a bit on Shaggy at times because a fairy involved in horror is hard to explain. And I think it wasn't until I really got to see the Babas interact and how the setting had decayed them that I came on the idea of how he was going to decay over time. So to me, for fairies, horror is not just about the big scary stuff; it's about decay of what they are, because inherently they're supposed to be good and fantastical. And Broy was just mangled the major Fae, and it was doing it to him as well. And so that was his personal horror, but it was also how it affected him, if that makes sense.
Lupine, what about, your experiences with horror and like character ideas you had? Maybe you tied into Dina?
Yeah. I mean, the sort of horror that speaks more to me, I've generally liked, like more psychological horror. And so, um, I mean, I kind of thought, what would this look like if Dina were actually terrified,
Mm-hmm.
like all the time? And uh, it sort of tied into um, the whole sort of devil may care attitude that she sort of put on. I mean, there was some of that. I mean, that was true sometimes, that she really didn't care what actually happened as long as she got out of it. But there were things where she was terrified. And I mean, the fact that Barovia was just an onslaught of horror all the time was very uh I mean, it sort of broke her a little bit too. I mean, I mean, it just was more visible for Triar. It was I think again, I'm sorry, I'm alluding to that backstory again, but just
Mm-hmm.
like the whole idea of being a good little worker. So I feel like Dina was just taught her entire life to be a good little worker, or look like you're one, and not to uh, show what you're really thinking or feeling. And um, so I mean, sort of like, I almost feel like that led me to make her do more batshit things,
Mm-hmm.
because uh, is sort of a rebellion against, like, you want me to be a prim and proper, you know, good, uh, party member who does what someone's supposed to do as an adventurer. I'm gonna jump into this eyeball, or I'm going to go smooch the elder chore, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I feel like horror, um, the more existential sort of psychological horror really resonates with me, and that's how I tried to play Dina, as sort of rebelling against it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Also, I just want to say, like, I just appreciate y'all as players at like, like having your characters you can react to things, the scary things as being scary. And because like I know that like there's definitely people who are like, all right, it's D&D. I'm gonna cast fireball at the thing and not get into it. And I feel like y'all as players and your characters like really like do working hard to sell the setting as well, which really made my job easier and let me have a lot of fun with it.
I definitely have
Giant
to say
eyeball
that,
tongue monsters.
yeah, I have to say that Trior did a great job with the like reacting to everything like it was legitimately terrifying every time. I
mm-hmm.
feel like I was not as strong in that regard, partially because I was like I kind of made the conscious decision early on that Grizzly is just a little bit too dense to be really truly scared of a lot of that stuff. It's a big monster, cool. It's made of tasty snacks. Um, but there were definitely some moments that unsettled Grizzly. But as far as horror for Grizzly, kind of going back to Chloe's question just real quick, was I feel like this is something that I touched on just a couple of times, just very briefly, like in the Amber Temple after killing Rahadin and stuff like that. Was really the horror I wanted to explore with Grizzly was the idea that he came into this as already basically a Ravenloft monster. Like if most people ran into Grizzly, they'd be like, "Oh, he's a monster, kill him." And I didn't feel like there was a lot of like really good narrative moments for him to kind of like lean into that, except a couple of times, like I mentioned. And so that's kind of what I was focused on with the horror from his perspective. It's hard to be scared of big monsters when you're a big monster yourself. But the idea of becoming, not necessarily even becoming a monster, but the idea of, I mean, if Strahd basically just sends people like Rahadin out to hurt other people, and those people defend themselves by killing Rahadin, is that what's going to happen to Grizzly if the people he's with send him out to kill people on their behalf? And like it was kind of like, it was a little bit of an existential sort of identity crisis type of thing, more so with him. Um, but yeah, as far as horror goes, I love horror movies. I love scary movies. I love horror stories. Less gory stuff, really. More legitimately scary. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I do.
I
I
do
do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that that definitely informed some of the way that I thought about playing Dina. Was the fact that, and I don't remember when you first mentioned it, but I started thinking about it. That, I mean, Grizzly really does appear as one of the monsters that we would fight,
Mm-hmm.
and so it sort of gave Dina more of a reason to like give people the benefit of the doubt, because Grizzly was such a nice person, and uh helping Dina accomplish her own goals too, and like protecting her, and the fact that this I don't think she really like thought about a lot of this before this happened. I mean, you know, she even though she got kicked out of her village, she led a pretty sheltered life, I think, probably.
Hmm.
And so the fact that Grizzly was friendly was something that sort of gave her pause in dealing with other people.
I never really
And
thought about it from that perspective, honestly. Like, I kind of thought about like how some of the interactions with the monsters in Barovia affected Grizzly, like how his observing other people's interactions with those monsters affected him. I never really
mhm,
kind of considered like, what does Grizzly being here mean for the other characters in their perceptions of stuff. So that's interesting.
mhm,
That's interesting to hear. I never really thought about that.
yeah,
If I could take the second and segue that into the question that Kashak asked in the
Oh yeah,
in chat,
thank
because
you.
it's kind of relevant to what you're talking about. They asked, um, where is it? Did anyone have
Oh
any
yeah.
relationships to improve or sour or otherwise NPCs with NPCs or PCs? And it kind of relates directly to what Ben was just talking about with Grizzly. When Trier first came in and met the two of them, he was terrified of Grizzly. And he didn't like Grizzly. He thought Grizzly was up to something, constantly making the jokes, constantly trying to lure them in. And so he was always standoffish and frustrated with Grizzly for a long time, never fully trusting him. And it took a while to get there. But over time, that trust and friendship grew. like, yeah, Grizzly, you just talk to them. You're better at that than me. He didn't have a problem with that anymore. And people like you. I don't understand it, but people like you, so just you make that happen. And it worked. And so it was great to feel that change grow over time. Um, and I mean, NPCs. When Trio first met Strahd, and we're on the roadside, absolutely terrified. Forced to dance with Strahd at her dinner, terrified. I have to go dance with a vampire. She's going to eat my face. I'm going to die a horrible death right now. Is what he was thinking. And so when he asked the question of who cares about you, it was to distract her from killing him. That was the initial fear check. And for him, was to ask that just so he could actually distract her so she wouldn't kill him or wouldn't think about it for more than 30 seconds. And little did he know, it would blossom something bigger. And here he goes off in the end to take care of Strahd. So that to watch that come full circle was really weird and fun. And so that to me was really, really, really the best part of this, getting a chance to do something way outside of what the setting even asks for or talks about. Is Chloe letting us take that one sentence, one question, and turn it into a defining theme for the rest of the game. And even though the question wasn't asked quite seriously.
Was that the first time we thought about sort of, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
calling it redemption, but
So, 'cause I'm pretty sure that's when I started the clock.
yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
because I remember thinking, wow, Chloe didn't even really suggest this to us. We just kind of came up with it.
No,
And
to Chloe's credit,
I
she
really appreciate
didn't
that
wait.
she's letting us do it, even though it's really harebrained.
No,
But
and that was a good split-second decision to make that happen on Chloe's
yeah.
part. So, giving players a chance to affect the environment. I think Rachel always talks about choices when we talk about gaming, and the best part about Gamers for Gaming is making choices. We kind of made our own choice, and Chloe led us, and then built on that when she didn't have to.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And
that's I guess in the same way Grizzly, like my Grizzly and my relationship or view on Strahd also changed a lot because up until that point, Grizzly was just like, and I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to fight and kill Strahd. Like that's the way this usually works out.
Well, yeah,
and it's
because
fine.
that's the way it always does.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And for a while, like Grizzly was still like, even after you're like, oh no, we have to help her. Grizzly was like, why? She's a terrible person. She hurts lots of people. But then after the whole thing at the Amber Temple with killing Rahadin, Grizzly was like, wow, yeah, no, okay. I guess if Trior says that it's probably best that we try to help Strahd, we probably should try to help Strahd. So that was a weird kind of evolution in the way Grizzly thought of Strahd as a person, I guess. So
well, I didn't think it was going to stick until Lindsay came along with Gal and actually really kind of ramped up that cycle because her character was so dang good.
Yeah.
she was.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me that it came out of not saying that Trier was like a stabby, but I mean he wasn't Gal. And so he was more likely to say this thing is scary, let's stab it and run away. And so I thought it was really kind of impressive that Trier like came up with this sort of like, let's see if we can help Strahd see the error of her ways, I guess.
The
All right.
night when it happened, real quick, I'm sorry, I want to get this out.
Hmm.
The night when it happened, I sat down with my wife afterwards and told her what happened, and she was like, "That's not the point of the module." I know, I don't know what we did, but Chloe's running with it, so hopefully we can make this happen. And 20 episodes later, kabam! So it was amazing for me to literally take a module off track, build a new track,
Mm-hmm.
and watch Chloe quickly lay it down in front of the train as we were going. But
feel like it was like, yeah, very much like in front of us, like lay track.
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Seriously.
it worked very well. So Anyway, that was the best answer to that question I could possibly give. Is that I think on both ends, his relationship with Grizzly and the relationship with Strahd completely changed over the course of the game.
Hmm.
All right, I think I actually want to respond to a couple of things and then take a break and then go on with. 'Cause I don't think everyone has gotten a chance to answer. Um, uh, so Ben, I did actually think a lot about like, do I want to push the like people being afraid of Grizzly at first sight thing? I think I think part of the reason I didn't push it so hard was because all of you were playing weirdos. Like none of you were human.
Mm.
Like since all of I think strictly speaking, like all of you qualified as monsters by
Yeah.
Barovia standards. And at some point, I'd be like, okay, if I lean into that too hard, you're never going to be able to talk to anyone.
It's actually one of the biggest weaknesses with the module, I think, is that it is very human centric. And so
Hmm.
if you play it the way it's intended, if anybody shows up as a non-human, it's supposed to be a huge problem. But a
And
lot of
it's
people
D and
don't want to
D.
play humans. That exactly, they
It's
want to play
so
something different.
yeah.
Um, but also, I felt like it kind of worked in a way in Barovia specifically because they're used to dealing with monsters, werewolves and vampires and things like that. Like it's not something that they see walking down the street all the time, but it's a fact of life for them. Whereas I feel
Yeah.
like in a Faerun game or something like that, the more over the top reaction would have made more sense.
Yeah,
So
I think if you had had like even one human in the party, I would have had every NPC like focus their attention on that character
right,
Hmm.
first before working their way out. But again, because none of you were, I was like, all right. At some like
Yeah.
I need to just let them have conversations with the
Like
PCs because otherwise
we're
we're going to
so
be
not
doing
getting
this a lot.
anywhere.
we're gonna
Hmm.
be here through Halloween of 2025.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, let's see. I think Strahd. Uh, so I think the whole redeeming Strahd thing, like honest, I think for me that was always on the table. On the table. So like reading the She is the Ancient module, I think a lot of figuring out how to characterize Strahd has had to do with my own personal life experiences and meeting people and like meeting abusive people. And I think in order for me to like really get into Strahd's headspace, I think not even her headspace, just like in to have a like coherent moral world, which I think is a hard thing that 5e in general is not great at. I think I had to go with the fact that like one, it is more monstrous if Strahd, is doing things and she has free will, that she's not like I explicitly did not want her to be like a pure puppet of the dark powers because that actually cuts away some of the horror of what she's doing because she's doing things that humans do to one another.
yeah. I guess
At
that
this,
interpretation is really rooted in like kind of standard like Catholicism and some of that those like real world belief structures. So
Yeah.
which one?
like the idea that like well Strahd is just
That
being
she's just meant
controlled by
to,
these dark powers and doesn't have any agency and it's not really Strahd doing these terrible things, it's the dark powers acting through Strahd. It's very like you know reminiscent of like Lucifer and like
I
forcing mortals to
remember
do evil
those
things.
sorts of I remember those sorts of things in like cartoons that I used to watch when I was a kid actually. I remember seeing that a lot more like as uh not exactly obviously not exactly the god and devil thing, but like somebody's being controlled by these evil powers and they need to be freed, or we just need to and the idea that that was like a sort of a benevolent way to look at it, but
Hmm.
it's really not because it's sort of taking away their own agency. And I don't know, just
Yeah.
I feel like the stories that I like, even making up stories, when you're kids, you play pretend. and even making up stories like when I was a kid, like there used to be uh, people that needed rescuing, or
Mm-hmm.
like people whose it wasn't really their fault. There were these undeniably evil forces that were taking over them, and now it's sort of like, no, we need to take. Uh, I guess it's more like we need to take. Uh, Shoot, what's the word I'm looking for?
Responsibility?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. We need to take responsibility for our own actions. We need to acknowledge that we are doing what we've got done, and sort of like helping Strahd like figure that out for herself. I don't know.
Yeah,
At
I
least
think
Yeah.
that's kind of why Trier was shouting at her at the end, like, stop being a puppet to them. They're using you. You have agency, and was you are you. You can make your own decisions. And because she could, and she was, but was she letting them influence her? Of course she was. And because it was easy. It was easy just to let all that flow naturally. And when we take responsibility for our actions and disrupt that flow, yeah, it's more difficult, but the results tend to be a lot better for you and for everybody. So
Yeah, I think the way I viewed it is that like, on her worst day, Strahd is a abusive monster. On her best day, she definitely cannot manage her emotions and definitely has a lot of anger management issues specifically.
So like
You know,
all of
I
us.
hmm yeah, I again, which is like again, and she is still responsible for the consequences of her actions. And like just like I think any, human in this world who is abusive can potentially like, be redeemed and take responsibility for their actions, but it's also really fucking hard and also takes a lot of effort from a lot of people.
It's funny
Um,
because, oh, sorry, go ahead. Because
yeah.
you said you wanted to take a break, so I don't want to interrupt.
I, I'm on a roll with this thought. Uh, yeah. So I think the idea of redeeming her has this really coming from my own personal viewpoint of like, I think that any person can take responsibility for their actions and change, but that doesn't mean it will be easy or like feasible. And like the whole like Arena's not letting her stay in Barovia, like that's a consequence to those actions. Like that was never on the table that Arena was going to let Strahd stay. Like Strahd's to go elsewhere. And also like that's why I was very much want to make sure that someone was staying with Strahd because again, like you don't just go to one day of therapy and get cured. It's an ongoing process, which is why like, had no one gone with Strahd afterwards, I would have just said she, went around conquering things again, just repeating those same patterns.
And then it all happened again.
I imagine Trier has a little squirt bottle of holy water. Every once in a while, he's just like, "Tss, no."
no, no,
um, I'll be honest. Well, actually, two quick things. I really like that there wasn't a romance arc ultimately between Irina and Strahd. Like,
Mhm.
I know there was like a little kind of element of that and everything, but that, I like the idea of like her Strahd basically being banished by Irina and that not becoming a thing, because that
Mhm.
whole like the couple of times I have seen like the good ending for Strahd usually involves that, and that's icky. But
Mhm.
I also I as Ben when everybody was like, oh, let's redeem Strahd, I was like, no, Strahd doesn't deserve it. Like if we can get Strahd to be like, hey, I legitimately am sorry for the things that I did, great, and that's it. Like we we chop her head off and we get rid of her. Because like I as Ben find it hard to be like someone's done all those terrible things and then at the end they get to be like, oh wow, I realized what I did was wrong, and then they get to go on continuing living their lives. um, Luckily Grizzly doesn't have those kind of compunctions, so it didn't come up in game, because that would have been a whole extra debate. But it
Yeah,
was
no,
it was
it's
weird
like
for me.
you're signing her up for years of therapy and like basically uh, not incarceration, but like she's definitely in a situation where like she is under like
House
parole and being
arrest.
watched by Trior,
Yeah, she's on
like the
she's on
people
parole.
around
Yeah.
her. Yeah.
Like the bracelet.
I thought about this for a long time during the whole planning of the arc and how it was going. And there's an episode of Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who where it's the whole Zygon inversion piece, where he's doing the lecture about war and how it is for them. And he looks Zygella right in the eyes and says, "Oh, you whiny little kids. Oh, you always say no one's more mean than me. No one does more evil things than me. I can't be forgiven." Well, here's the rub. I forgive you. You can be forgiven. You can get away. You can make a difference. You can change. And I happened to watch that randomly a couple of days later, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of where we're going.
Mhm.
Okay. And but I kept that in mind through the entire arc. That whole speech about how this awful person had to make a change, had to make a difference for herself to actually get to the point where she could actually realize that what she was doing was awful and find a way to not seek forgiveness, but to forgive herself and
Mhm.
then fix things. Is Strahd gonna fix things? I don't know. We'll see if Trier can make her do that. Or write fan fiction, who knows? But yeah, that's kind of where the thought process I had too, where that whole piece came into it for me.
Mhm. Yeah, and I also like to add that, like, I also don't think that Strahd deserves forgiveness, but and at the same time, I also think that, like, as a human being, like, anyone could, like, try and make amends for their actions in the past,
Hmm.
and I think, like, that tension is it. It is like a just hard part of existing as a human, and that's why I like was really, excited to see y'all wrestle with that in game. Because that is not a thing with like a single like easy answer, not in not in that game and not in real life. So yeah, so like
That's the truth.
until the end, I didn't know like like where you would go.
It's one of the reasons we play games like this is because
Mm-hmm.
there are so many variables. You can never know how it's going to turn out.
Mm-hmm. All right, well let's take a break now because I definitely need some water, and then we can get back to more questions.
All right.
Sounds good.
We'll be back in, you want to say 8 minutes? Basically, come back
Yeah,
10,
do
10
8 minutes.
before the hour? Okay. We will see everybody in Eastern Time Zone at 11:50, and then everybody in Pacific Time Zone at 8:50.
And then in UTC, I don't know because I don't know UTC. Anyway,
Have a good
see you in
break,
a bit.
everybody. Hello, and welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good break.
Yeah, so that last question definitely got away from us. I think what was the question? Like, uh, the
Relationships.
yeah, relationships. Do you have like any relationships that like changed or like shifted and and surprised you during game?
Yeah, because nothing ever took away from us. Ever. Ah, Cthulhu!
Ooh, 1 year subscriber.
At Cthulhu. Yeah, congratulations.
Woohoo!
Well, if nothing come to mind, do you want to hear? I actually want to talk about some lore. Do you want to hear
Yes.
about the dark powers?
I do.
How did
Yes,
we fuck
definitely.
up and what was actually supposed to happen?
Mm, I think things went. Nothing was. I don't think things were particularly weird. Okay, so the dark powers, because it was on my mind since we were talking about the whole idea of Strahd having free will. I actually
Mm-hmm.
had I have like three different answers for what the dark powers are.
Ooh,
I think
interesting.
in terms of like Strahd, there's the dark powers as like a manifestation of those like negative quote unquote emotions that people have. That like at some level Strahd is abusive, but humans can be abusive. She just has more physical power to do that with. Like the dark powers are just this manifestation of what that power of it's the whole thing. We make things hyper real in fantasy stories.
Right.
Right.
Like, like the power is that emotion going out of control. There, so and because of that, like there's never any moment when I was like, she's being controlled by the dark powers. Like at some level, they are a manifestation of her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is why it was important that she's like, okay, I reject the dark powers because, in the way that stories and games do, you have a physical representation of to represent this emotional idea. So I had them as a point for that. I had them cosmologically speaking. You brought up the thing, something with the four cities, but I boiled that down a little bit, and I was focused on, you have the material plane, you have the Feywild, and you have the Shadowfell, which this actually is going to answer your question, Mike, of like, where the fuck were you at the end of the last episode? I actually see, like, if I were to give the most concrete answer in universe would be that I would actually say the Dark Power are a kind of Fey. And Mike, you would know this well because you've played Changeling. Like, actually think of them. You have the Seelie and Unseelie, and then you have the
Right.
ones that are just like devour emotions whole. Like that's what I think of the dark powers. Like, in the same way that Fae eat emotions, the dark powers eat emotions. Explains why you have these powerful Fae beings just hanging around Barovia. Like they're just different sides of a coin. And I think the third answer is that I thought of again, going off of that idea of like creatures that like eat or feed off of emotion, I actually thought of them as like a as like me, or rather a version of a DM, as like like their goal is to construct a scenario that is entertaining for them and gives them the stuff they need to feed. I think I had to think about it a lot because I think I wanted to make sure they had a coherent motive, which is to be like they want to see the most entertaining thing and elicit as much fear and horror from the players and characters. Which is why they're not just going to kill you outright. Like that was the way to justify the fact that D&D is a game where generally you, again, even in a horror setting, you try to have relatively balanced combat. I'm like, okay, if I have this as their motivation, then the experiences make sense. Being scary, but also survivable. Anyway, that's my secret dark powers lore.
Hmm.
Nice. I
I
actually,
like that.
I really, I really dislike the dark powers as an element in the module. It's one of my least favorite elements of Barovia. Because, like we talked about earlier, it really does kind of rob the main villain of that villainhood. Like it sort of cheapens it because it's suddenly not this person who just was like, no, it's all about me. I want what I want, and if I can't have it, nobody can.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of takes away from that and makes it. But it was actually manipulated by these unknowable like beings that you can't actually fight or destroy or ever truly get rid of. They're always going to be here. Ha ha ha. And it's very Lovecraftian, I guess, in a lot of ways. And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually one of my least favorite things about horror is the idea that it's very common in modern horror movies. I find like, um, the main character spends the entire movie basically fighting against whatever's going to happen and thinking they've found a solution and yada yada yada. And at the end, they're like, "Oh, everything's fine," and then the thing shows up and eats them. It turns out they couldn't be fighted anyways. It's like that's not compelling. That's not a
It's cheap.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you could never win anyways, then why the hell are you telling us this story?
Yep.
Like you could have just skipped right to the end of, oh, they were cursed and so they got dragged to hell or devoured by monsters or whatever. I don't know. That's actually one of my least favorite parts of Ravenloft. So,
You know, I agree. And when I first played the new version of 5e, our DM ran the dark powers not as controlling Strahd, but as wanting us to kill Strahd for them. Because they were trapped in the Ember Temple, and they wanted us to use what they could grant us to destroy Strahd. And it forced us all to touch the dark powers and take the things they granted us, which no one should ever do in game. That stuff is awful.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
It,
think
it, ooh,
yes. I like talking about Lupine like that existential and psychological horror. It is like the horror is like it is not the monster. Like humans are where the horror comes from at the end of the day. Yeah, and like the fantasy is just a conduit to express big ideas
Yeah.
in more concrete ways, and that was definitely what I tried to do with the dark powers.
Yeah.
Also, give you a big thing to punch.
The most dangerous game.
I liked Benevolent. It's kind of funny because I guess there were some seeds laid for like the Strahd redemption thing earlier on because when Grizzly found the amulet that Ben was contacting him through, there was a discussion in character about like who this entity is, and Trier had suspicions that there was something not quite right with it. But like even then, Trier was still willing to be like, okay, well, I mean, if you think Ben's your friend, then we'll go with that until Ben decides to not be friends anymore. So it's kind of interesting that was a little bit of foreshadowing, I think, into the larger Strahd thing. Like Trior clearly had that capacity in him, even before we met Strahd. So I think that was kind of an interesting little narrative thread.
and mind you, when that came up, like was Trier thinking, well, I can't stop Grizzly at all, so I better just appease him and we'll work this out later on. But Mike's like, I don't know if I could find a way to kill another PC if this goes horribly wrong. I'd feel awful. Because that had the whole point of it completely off the rails. With Benevolence possessing Grizzly and all hell breaking loose, quite literally.
I did early on like kind of have that thought to myself like, is there the capacity for Grizzly to just go bad? Like in Barovia. And I was like, I mean, maybe I don't really want it to go that way, but if the story leads in that direction, then I'll lean into it. And I'm glad that it didn't. but it sure would have been interesting to see if that had been how it played out.
Mhm. Yeah, I think probably the first time I introduced benevolence, I was still deciding what I wanted the dark powers to be. But
Mm.
even then, it was very important that like that like she at no point it was never on the table that she could like possess you. She would just offer you things. Like the cabin that you run into, like the reason that you find that monster there, the same kind, the tongue monsters, which are also in the Amber Temple, is that these are other people who have made deals with the dark powers.
Right, that
That
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, so like she offers you things, but it was like pretty much always off the table, like the idea of her possessing you. Because again, the horror is not like being possessed. The horror is like choosing to do horrible things.
Exactly.
She's just a conduit that that just makes those choices more explicit as a narrative story framing device.
I have another question to pose if we're open
Yeah.
to it. This is going to be for everybody, but I'm going to start with Chloe. Um, what character would you have played in the module if you had been playing instead of running it?
Ooh, like if I were to play a player character?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me think about, this party specifically. I think probably m- maybe a like a very legalistic paladin. I think to have that counterpoint of like, nope, Strahd is evil, vampires are evil, we need to fight, like we need to kill Strahd, probably would have been like antagonistic towards Grizzly. Again, and this is like thinking from the perspective of what's the most drama,
Right, right.
and you know, and like to give the most contrast with the existing party. Were I to actually play, I would love to bring back my rogue character, Karen, who was my very first D&D character. She was a
Nice.
rogue. Um, and then I think she actually took some levels in Paladin
Hmm.
after seeing some of the evil things that Strahd did. Uh, I think there are a bunch of dead kids in you know that that in one of the villages, which she was like, nope, I am dedicating my time here to destroy this evil. But she was definitely not a legalistic paladin. She was still very chaotic, like good
Mhm.
paladin versus versus lawful paladin.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think playing that very much like her hero character, being like, this is horrible, but I am going to fight against Strahd with like tooth and nail and try and make this place better.
Okay. Dina, what about you? If you had to rely on a backup character for reasons, what would you have played instead of Dina? Or sorry, Lupine. What would you have played instead of Dina?
Uh, hmm. I think I would have. I mean, I could see either going like I think it would be interesting to play that very lawful paladin, but also I think it'd be interesting to sort of play like a warlock character. Um, maybe who's a little bit uh closer in the sense of like they could turn into uh one of these enemies that they're fighting at
Oh,
any time.
I would have loved to have a character who would have taken the dark powers up on the deals.
Yeah, I mean, although to be fair, Dina had her moments where she was like,
Mhm.
should I just do this?"
I mean, she did take up the Shadow Sword on its offer
Yeah, yeah.
briefly.
Uh, but
Dabbled.
then I decided, you know, I don't know. I decided that it would be better again, sort of that walking that line between, like, do I do what's good for the party, or do I do what's good for me? Not that necessarily doing what's good for the party would not be good for me. It's just like, do I get all the shinies, uh, and screw over the party, that kind of thing. But, um, so walking that line, between like, uh, do I want, do I just want to like go all out, like completely hedonist? So I don't know. I think it would be really fun to play. It would be really interesting to either play a character. Oh, you know what? I could combine the two. So what I would like to play is a very lawful evil warlock. So someone who like follows rules, and like they follow like the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law kind of thing. But has this sort of like bent and, uh, sort of like dark evil, like maybe even necromancer bent sort of thing. I don't know. I just think it'd be fun to play with that idea.
Okay. Trier, what about you? Or sorry, Mike, what about you? If you didn't,
It's funny that Lupe mentioned that because when I played Curse of Strahd for the edition initially, I played a lawful evil warlock of the Undying, the ones who worship liches.
oh,
And
nice, nice.
yeah, when he encountered the lich in the game, it was like it was a holy moment for him. But it's funny that it really didn't come into play all that much. But yeah, exploring that dark end was really kind of terrifying, and I was probably the worst off person in the group that did a pullback from doing really awful things because it could, and this world didn't seem to care.
Right.
Oh, villagers dead? Pfft, who cares? They probably deserved it, things like that. And playing that kind of person was really harder than you think it is,
Oh, yeah.
because if you're not that kind of person in real life, it's hard to. I can be evil. No, no, you don't understand. not that,
Yeah,
not that easy.
it's a lot harder than.
But yeah, it was neat to play. So I'm glad you're interested in that. It's interesting to play that kind of character in any setting, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult. If I were to pick something else other than Trier, I don't know. Uh, I normally don't play straight up wizard characters because to me they tend to be very static. But I think in this case, this setting really does play well for wizards because they're easily corruptible. Because they're really, let's face it, they're always looking for power, more spells, more stuff. How can I collect this stuff? And so they're easily corruptible, and being able to play that angle would be a lot of fun, I think. I played the second time. I played a celestial sorcerer, and that really didn't work as well as I thought it would because um, he was always in opposition to the setting, and so I was playing the ultra good person that she was, and it just didn't pan out. The
Hmm.
group was not having that. They were not having that, and so it made the game so difficult to play that it really wasn't worth it. So
Gotcha. Very cool.
Rachel has a
Ben, did
question.
you have another backup character you were thinking of?
Yeah. What about you, Ben?
I didn't really. I would probably, if it had come right down to it, I would have ended up probably going with a fairly straightforward, like, human fighter, like, came from a small town, always wanted to be the captain of the watch in his town, and for whatever reason ended up going off on an adventure type of thing. Very kind of like wholesome, country boy type of thing. But that's just like a knee jerk reaction to my own question, the answer to which I didn't really consider because I didn't expect you to turn it around on me. Alternatively, I would have, like, if it had come right down to it, I would have asked, depending on where we were in the story, I would have asked to play one of the Barovian NPCs as a player. What's her name with the half demon face?
Oh, Isabel.
Isabel.
Isabel, yeah,
That's
like
the one I was thinking of.
she would have been fun to play, like take over as a PC after we had like kind of made friends with her, or
Yeah.
Less enemies with her.
I think
oh yeah, less enemies, I
she'd
guess,
be very,
rather than
a
friends.
very interesting
Hmm.
one to play.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of NPCs throughout the module that are like that would make very compelling like replacement characters without having to like be like, oh, someone new got pulled into Barovia and now you're with the group.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I probably would have picked one of the NPCs and figured out a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my thoughts for if any of your characters die was that I would have like given you control of Arena.
Another good choice, yeah. Because she in the original Curse of Strahd module, because she's such a main character, I feel like that would be kind of a weird thing to try to like have someone take over, because then it sort of the game sort of becomes about that person. But I feel like in She is the Ancient, that's less of a concern because
Hmm.
the end goal is going to be very different for that character. So yeah,
And her
I
sort
could
of
see that.
motivations feel. I mean, not knowing a lot about the Strad module anyway, but her motivations feel a lot more. Um, less a lot. Not more less. A lot less defined in the She is the Ancient than in because in the OG Strahd or whatever, um she's sort of, and I mean she's sort of portrayed, I feel like, as someone who wants these things. You read stories about knights rescuing princesses,
Hmm.
damsels in distress, and the damsel always wants to be rescued.
Hmm.
And so, like, what if the damsel didn't want to be rescued? Like, that feels like this Irina to me.
Hmm. Yeah, she wants to make a better Barovia,
Yeah, she
and like
she very much wants to be part of what happens next
yeah, and I
instead of.
think like there's definitely enough interiority that like like I've trusted y'all as role players to be like, all right, here is like I would have given you all that backstory and been like, all right, go for it, do what you think Arena would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could have worked
Okay.
out pretty well. I forget in the original module I think Irina just uses the noble stat block, right? Like she doesn't.
Yeah. It doesn't have anything else but the noble stat block.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think at any point it gives her like the option to gain class levels or become like a sidekick or anything. It's just the noble stat block.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like
Yeah, and
in most of the versions that I've seen or that I've played in, Irina usually ends up getting a little bit of a more active role. Like the DM usually gives her a more active role and usually gives her some kind of little power bump. So
yeah, and I think in this case she was explicitly the ally character. So I was like, all right, we're gonna give her like all these things would have been true about her character regardless, but as the ally character, I was like, all right, we're really gonna push this farther.
oh, that's right, because she was part of our
Mhm.
Taroka reading, wasn't she?
Yep.
That's
And which was 100% random. Like that, I did not stack the deck or anything. That was just randomness.
that is one of my favorite parts of the module is the importance of the Taroka deck and the fact that they went through and like you can just do a reading and whatever you get is what you get. I think that's one of my favorite elements of it.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, you have two items in the castle. This will be something.
I forget. I know the Sun Sword. What was the other one that was in the
The
castle?
journals in the castle.
Oh, that's right. The book. The thing that Grizzly was least interested in. That's why I don't remember.
Hmm.
On my initial play, the Sun Sword was in that particular gypsy camp, according to the draw, and so we had it on game 3. And it was a pain in the ass to have that for the entire campaign. Strahd didn't want to talk to us. Vampires weren't a problem technically, and so it drove the GM nuts.
I know you know this, Mike. So I do apologize for jumping in to correct you, but that particular, I think you meant Vistani versus the the word
Did I
that
say
you used.
did I say
Yeah,
G word? I'm
Mhm.
sorry. That was
that's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure you knew, but yeah, just because I don't want any of our viewers thinking that we're
Nope.
Mhm.
yeah.
Nope. I'm just old and stupid and forget things.
It's an easy habit to slip into sometimes, so I totally understand.
All right.
Were
Well,
did the Vistani, I forget, did the Vistani really play a major role in this campaign? I don't think they did.
Mm,
no. Again, I think there was enough going on that I was like, I could have made them do more, but I was like, we got enough happening.
Yeah.
I kind of
There
appreciate.
is,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, but like they're all, but but again, and this is part of She's Ancient, that they are all friendly, aside from the one you meet at the beginning, who has her own shit going on.
When I took my crack at running Strahd a while back, I actually because I remember having this conversation from ages ago, before the conversation kind of became more mainstream. Oh, I'm a hipster. Look at that. I didn't even think about that. Anyways, I had kind of rewritten it so that the Vistani were, instead of just kind of like blindly helping Strahd and whatnot, it was a sort of a thing where Strahd like um, basically like blackmailed the Vistani into being like, well, you have to, if you want to be able to leave this place, then you have to bring people to me, and sort of making them complicit through like coercion and stuff like that. And I
mm.
felt it was a little bit better than the out of the box Vistani in the original module,
Hmm.
because that's not great writing.
Yeah, that of the box Vistani are oh,
Yeah,
really bad. That's why, like, I would never run Curse of Strahd as written. Like
yeah,
again, like I was interested in the campaign because of its historical importance in the D&D canon, but I was like, I want to have a base that is better from the get-go and then work from there.
yeah. Agreed.
Mm.
I think like for all, at least I would say 90% of the character motivations were just straight up, stuff that was written for She is Ancient. There are a few things I changed to customize based on what was happening in the game, but for the most part, they, they did the Beth the Bard did a really good job of giving all the characters giving them interiority and different things that they wanted and needed. So yes, which definitely made my job a lot easier.
For sure, because
I saw,
a lot of the Wizards modules are not great at that. They're like,
nope.
here's a stat block and a quick explanation of how this person ties into the story, but you don't know
Mhm.
jack about him.
Yeah, the She's the Ancient book is like 120 pages. It doesn't have any it doesn't have like any encounters or battles. It's basically just characters and like how to play them and how they're connected to one another. Yeah, which as a GM is exactly the kind of thing that I want. All right. Oh, so let me. I know Rachel asked this little bit ago. What is um yeah, what is everyone doing post adventure? I was actually thinking the same question. What's everyone doing a year from now?
I
Well,
think since Trior left, um, watching left with watching Strahd. Um, the DM in me says that he'd had to have lost control of her and her people, and has to come back to find his friends to go back and stop her again. But um, he up until anything bad happens, he's going to be following along and literally quite being Jiminy Cricket for Strahd. He's small to sit on her shoulder. He can do that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a full time job to be a conscience for a vampire. 'Cause let's face it, Strahd's conscience is challenged, and so that's a full time job for him. He's going to have to do that for probably the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
No way she's going to change.
Yep.
Trianor needs to become a night person.
Yeah, he'll manage.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do imagine that like Rahadin and Filisevic is kind of just hanging around, but Rahadin does care about Strahd, and I think she's convinced that you're helping Strahd become better. So I don't, so I don't think Strahd is necessarily going to run off. Like I want to give you things as players. You worked hard to get that ending, and an ending where you're spending your rest of your life being a conscience. Against a hard ending, but I'm also not going to undercut that.
yeah,
Wow.
that's something
So
that
Trier does get to be cheaty. So wonderful.
yeah. One thing I would say is that like I love horror, um, but I also have a preference for happy endings.
Hmm.
Not to say that all of them have to be, but I'm not a huge fan of uh, the trend of like, oh well, the heroes go off and they triumph and hooray, and then the next movie is, but everything they did was for naught and everything is terrible again. It's
Hmm.
like, then why are we doing like why like I kind of like the idea that if we went through, we kind of ended it as is, and Strahd has some difficulties, but does make a legitimate go of it, and it doesn't turn
Hmm.
into a, well, now we have to go clean up our mess thing. Um, but that's just my personal preference. As for what Grizzly's up to a year from now, I mean, like the fan of like the tragic in me says he's probably dead, having gotten involved in some ridiculous adventure. Um, but I don't know if that really feels right. I feel like he's probably just gotten caught up with whatever other random group of adventurers came along. He's maybe gone back and like dealt with the whole thing from his backstory, um, but he's never been the best at like long-term planning and things like that. So it's really up in the air for Grizzly. I legitimately don't know.
I imagine he probably got caught up in something else. I don't think he would have just died. Like
He's got a baby mimic now.
he's gotten pretty buff in Barovia.
That's true. Like he's definitely gonna be doing a lot of fighting, but he's also got a baby mimic to look after now. So that's an interesting wrinkle. Yeah, exactly.
I forgot.
Um, Dina doesn't really have anything specific that she wants to do. Any plans for anything? She's more about kind of living in the moment, I guess. I did talk about earlier. If you guys, if Trior and Grizzly and Gal were in a place that Dina could find them, Dina would come visit and stuff, and not necessarily say hi, just kind of touch base, just see you guys, and buy that skirt from the window. But mostly, I think Dina is just kind of and then you talked about you mentioned the possibility that they would die, and I was like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense because Dina got used to fighting and living with a group of other fighters. So like I could see her like misjudging a situation because she was real cautious when she was alone, but then she got used to like being with a bunch of other people, a bunch, you guys.
Hmm.
And I could see her pulling the kind of shit that she pulled in Barovia, but she had backup. And then suddenly not having backup. So there is a distinct possibility that Dina would just get in over her head at some point. I'd like to think that she would be a little more careful now that she doesn't have, somebody watching her back. But I don't know that she would. That she would. I don't know that that would happen.
You think she'd team up with Cowboy Vampire? with Filisevic?
I mean, if he, I mean, so Trier is gonna be well. She would check up on Strahd too. I mean, if she could be found. So and Trier was gonna stay with Strahd. So I think she'd uh, just come look in on him every once in a while. And I don't know if he was willing to go hang out in the forest with her, she would do that. She is kind of, I mean, she's kind of an independent soul
Hmm?
too. So I
I
can see
mean,
her running around by herself. Hmm?
yeah, I think my thought was with him was that he'd probably hang out with Strahd and Rahadin and then wander off,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
for the wilderness. So,
Yeah. I mean, um, she was used to being on her own, but and oh gods, it feels like a really long time. But I don't think we actually spent that long in Barovia.
no, in the way of D&D campaigns, everything,
Yes.
a lot happens in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. So, I don't know how long she could actually like stand being with another person. You know what I mean? She's really kind of a lone wolf. So, I don't know. I know that sounds stupid and edgelordy, but you know what I mean.
I mean, he missed the werewolf chance. She could literally have been a wolf.
Literally be a lone wolf, yeah.
I think someone had to make that save. I think it was
Right?
Grizzly.
Right.
I remember Grizzly being like, "Ah, you got the con. You're not going to get
Yeah,
infected."
because we were like, what if Grizzly like took it and then we'd have like a bat person who's also like a werewolf. And then we were talking about the fact that were meets human.
Hmm.
Werewolf
And
Grizzly
so
would have been awesome. I'm just gonna say it.
so that wolf. Wolf bat.
I'm
Yeah.
disappointed. I'm disappointed that Grizzly did not become a werewolf.
Yeah.
But
So
c'est la vie.
yeah. You'll just have
Like
to do
again,
that
there's
in your
werewolf
next
content
your
and
next Barovia
she's
campaign where you
ancient.
play a giant bat person.
Um,
You know, that one.
I do know about gangrels.
oh.
So Rachel, I did think about like giving each of the vampire brides a specific like Vampire the Masquerade power. Filisevic cowboy vampire would have had celerity. He would have been the gun build.
Mhm.
oh,
So I
vampire.
don't know. I mean, it'd probably be fun, but he seemed like kind of like a loner to me too. So
Yeah.
I think we'd probably get along.
Hmm.
We'd you know meet up and run through the forest and cause some havoc, and then we'd leave. I don't know, meet up again. I don't know.
I imagine you just like running into each other every now and again.
Yeah. Oh, hey, fancy meeting you here. You want to go knock off that town? Or, there's a giant troll and cave over there that's been stealing shit from the villagers. Let's go take care of him.
All right, I want to go over for Rachel, the Vampire the Masquerade headcanon. So, because we had the three brides, like I'd base them on the three heroes from the original Dracula book. So you have Filisevic, who's like the cowboy, American person. Ovsky was like based on the on the like doctor person. And then
Tremere, I
what's her
assume.
name? What?
Was he Tremere, I assume?
I think I had him as Tremere. Yeah, Filisevic was Toreador. He was Tremere, and then the last lady, can't remember her name, Trier threw a fireball at her.
Variety.
She would have been a Ventru,
Oh,
Oh, then
okay.
she did with the fireball, so that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
which is why she was the worst.
I'm glad she got the fireball then.
Hmm.
So
Wait,
Rahadin wasn't.
Radine was Lucy?
Rahadin was not a vampire, right?
Rahadin was not. Wait, what did you ask, Lupine?
Wait, so I'm just like, Rodin was Lucy? Because you
Ah,
said you based them off the three main characters in the original Dracula. I'm just
or
thinking,
like not main characters,
oh,
three
okay.
suitors. I
Oh,
mean,
okay. Then never mind. Not Lucy. Got it. Because I was like, Rodin didn't seem like Lucy to me.
So Rahadin was just Renfield.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that is kind of her portrayal in the
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
in the original Curse of Strahd. She is pretty unchanged. I think the big note is that they actually do talk about like Rahadin was officially adopted into the family and is like legally speaking Strahd's sister. And you know, I actually wasn't gonna think too much about the level of affection until Ben, you pushed on it, and I was like, well, I guess let's dig into this family dynamic.
Yay! Family
Ra-
drama.
Rahadin does actually legitimately care about Strahd. I think Strahd probably does care about Rahadin, but Strahd is too broken of a person to really be feeling effective love for other people.
Hmm.
Emotionally unavailable.
Yep.
Yeah.
A fun thing in the Amber Temple, Rahadin is specifically there to like try and free Strahd from the dark powers.
Oh God, I wish we'd talked to her.
Oh, that makes it
Oh.
so much worse.
Uh-huh.
That we killed her.
Yeah. I
When
thought you were gonna talk to her and maybe you'd have this conversation. And I was like,
Oh.
that that
No, we're
was
just
one
like, shoot, shoot, stab, stab, stab.
that was definitely up there in episodes where things did not go how I thought they would.
Oh my god.
I gotta be honest, getting that luck blade, I was like, Grizzly's gonna wish for the dumbest thing. Like, I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna. And then I was like, wait, no, I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hmm.
actually, he has an actual legitimate regret. So,
Hmm.
and Grizzly
And
can't have regrets. He's a free spirit.
mhm.
Well, and that totally changed Rahadin. The screaming voices in their head were gone, and I think her outlook changed completely at that point. It seemed.
Well, the funny thing is that I specifically did speak with Chloe about it. And was
Mhm.
like, I want to wish for Rahadin to come back and be like and be okay with being good. And Chloe made the very good point that she was like, no, I don't think we should use a wish to basically be like, this person is now this thing or is now this way. And so I altered it to be, I wish for Heidi to come back and to be willing to talk about it at the very least. Um,
Yeah, and
so
I think that was like that was really she's willing because I think y'all earned like had so many conversations with her in game and like were trying to make that connection. Like and like which is why like she wasn't gonna help you fight Strahd at the end. Like she isn't like suddenly like, all right, team heroes, let's go. Uh, yeah, and Bob brings up a thing. Rahadin is that encounter is in base Curse of Strahd. It's a possible encounter for the Amber Temple. I actually don't think they really. It's not thought out super well in the base. I don't think they give Rahadin enough interiority for that to make sense. But I think she's the ancient runs with that of like, okay, it makes sense if there actually is this like sisterly connection, even though it's definitely more one-sided because of emotional availability.
Can I sort of piggyback on that
Yeah.
and ask you what uh so what was the whole thing about Rahadin? First of all, we kind of assumed it was Rahadin, but was Rahadin sort of like, was it actually Rahadin who Siri was talking to about us?
Yes.
And I, I guess I don't know, like sort of what was the motivation for that? Was she like worried that we were gonna kill Strahd or
I think
something?
it's more generally that like they talk like the module talks about Strahd having this whole spy network, and knowing everything that's going on at once. And I imagine Rahadin does a lot to manage that.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think that she was, at least at that point, with how strong you were, legitimately worried about you being able to kill Strahd. But she still wants to know what you're up to.
Right.
And I think, and I think you asked, like, does she report to Strahd? And I think that honestly, Strahd is too wrapped up in her own, like, emotions to care, and Rahadin is managing this.
Strahd's got this inbox that's just all these old reports Rahadin has submitted that have never been read.
Yep.
It's just gathering dust.
Mm-hmm. Rahadin's the one who does all the work in Barovia.
She's the admin assistant who is like actually running the company. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest one is from like 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been touched.
Yeah, I don't. There wasn't like an explicit threat there. I think it was more that like, okay, I wanted to be, after having this dinner, to really increase a sense of like, you are in Strahd's view now. Before you're just like in Barovia, kind of wandering around, and after the dinner, it's like there are expectations on you, and your actions are being watched and judged.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but there wasn't any specific like thing that she was worried about that I had
If
in mind.
So I will say that I thought about it, and if Rahadin had not, if Siri had not been talking to Rahadin, uh, Dina would not have participated in, and I'm not saying this after
The shankening?
fact. Yes, the shankening.
No, I mean that's fair. Like I don't like, at the
Yeah,
very least, like she's violating
Dina
your
felt
privacy.
very weird about it.
I mean, you should. Like nothing about the situation should make you feel
and
good.
and if, like, because Dina sensed, I mean, Dina saw everything sort of like, she was starting to see things more in shades of gray, but she was seeing everything in black and white, and lots of black and white. And so the first thing when I forget if we knew that. Did we know it was Rahadin that Siri was talking to, or did we
Yes,
assume
I
it was
think I gave you
Rahadin?
that.
We found out, yeah.
Just Siri was like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I'm talking to Rahadin."
And I was like, and so Dina was like, she's talking to Rahadin, so Rahadin has become a threat.
I mean, Rahadin would absolutely have tried to kill you if you were explicitly like
I know.
gearing up to kill
Yeah.
Strahd.
Yeah.
So you weren't wrong.
But because of that, because of the thing we talked about before, the fact that Grizzly was, like, I guess had a monstrous visage, and but he was nice.
Hmm.
It made Dina think about other things more, and so Dina felt very conflicted about that one.
That definitely felt like an interesting turning point. I was like, "All right, I really want to see where the party's going with this."
I
Bob, yes, the accountant is in the mod. I think players just never wandered in there.
Oh, we avoided an accountant. That actually that I was going to ask a question that just came to mind because I see we're getting close to time here,
Hmm?
and this is for Chloe. What was your favorite encounter that you got to run, and what was an encounter that you really wanted to run that we skipped or avoided?
I really wanted you to do the Strahd fight. I think it's an interesting combat. Like she is. There are a lot of encounters that are just like undead or monsters and things that are very much rawr. I hit and fight you. And I feel like Strahd is definitely, if like like because she is like a tactician. Like I would have had to play her in a way that made her look like she is, doing planning.
A badass, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that is fun to be like to have like that role playing idea behind characters. I think my favorite encounter. I did enjoy the big encounter at the end, and like actually, because that was an encounter where I was like, I think you could probably survive this, but not necessarily. Very
With
easily go bad on you.
the flesh column.
Yep, with the
Yeah, that was
it's
I was
Like
putting
a
out some
it's
damage, that's for sure.
yeah.
Not very tall, but very
It's based on the
thick
greater Starspawn
normal flesh.
emissary from yep, big tall
Oh.
flesh column.
Oh,
It's there are a few monsters I took from the Guide to Ravenloft book, the Von Richten Guide to Ravenloft book to like fill things out. Because again, I knew a lot of you knew Strahd, so I wanted to expand things. I think favorite encounter was just the like siege on Argynvost Hold with just here are dozens of undead to deal with. Alright, I like y'all are high enough level and have enough tools that I can just make that like scary
well, those
horde
undead
happen.
at us.
I know Gal was really happy with her turn undead that like just
Mhm.
vaporized a fair number of them. So
I love that. I love
Mhm.
turn undead.
who was the big NPC that we fought there? Was that Offski?
Offski was that one.
Okay, we killed the hell out of that guy. We were just like, screw
Mhm.
you, man.
Yeah.
No, there
You
was
beat him
no
up. He ran off into the sunlight and
Yeah.
died there.
there was no like question with him like there was with Rahadin in
Mhm.
Dina's mind. Dina was just like, Ovsky has to die.
Bad
Mhm.
dude. Bad dude.
Especially now knowing that he was kind of inspired by the Tremere. Yeah, I don't feel bad about it in retrospect. It's okay.
Yeah, if you took care of the Tremere and Ventru Vampire, you did what needed to be done.
Honestly, there aren't very many clans that I think really like would get a pass. So
I like the Bruja. It definitely depends, but for the most part, I'm like, all right, Brujas are kind of okay.
I was playing in Bruja when I first met Rachel at a vampire LARP back in the day.
Yeah, that was my first vampire character.
Nice.
I played Bruja.
Oh,
She
oh.
she used a Setite power on me in Elysium, and I punched her in the face. It became a whole thing.
That checks out.
Not
All right,
surprised her at all.
getting off track. I forgot.
Sorry, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, favorite encounter. I think yeah, getting to that big encounter, especially because I think the way that 5e is designed is that they don't usually have you fight that many creatures at a time, and especially because so many campaigns are at lower levels that even small amounts of a lot of monsters can be lethal.
Yeah.
So it's like you're finally at a point where I can like throw a bunch of monsters and have them be interesting, and that's the thing I don't think I've had a chance to run.
Was it a ghoul or a ghast that was like climbing up the wall to get at Dina?
Um, forget which. I mix them
I
up
think
all
it
the
was-
time.
Yeah.
So
I think it was
so do I.
gassed. I think it was gassed.
That sounds right to me. But that was a cool moment because I was like, ooh, they can run up walls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're undead monks. That's scary.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, flying. Like, I'm gonna let you really take advantage
Yeah.
of that flying and ping them down.
I'll be honest, when I was like, "Ooh, I'll play Grizzly, like the flying thing, and that'll be fun," and then everybody ended up flying, and I was like, "Well,
Mhm.
that didn't quite go the way I was expecting it to." But eh.
Yeah, I was like, all right, guess I'm adjusting some of these encounters.
Mhm.
Well, I made Trier in a vacuum. I had no idea that you were playing a flyer.
Gotcha.
And so it just ended up that way, which is odd.
I think Gal did the same thing when she was making her character. She's like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna play an Aarakocra cleric," and I was
Mhm.
like, I didn't think anything of it until it was too
Yeah.
late. Oh, well, too late, but you know what I mean. So good
And I was
times.
like, you know what? We'll have some flying boots for Dina. I don't want to
Yes,
have
thank
to.
you.
I don't want
Yeah.
to have to just have one character not fly.
I thought it was interesting if more than one character didn't fly, but if only one character didn't fly, I thought it would be kind of like I didn't want to slow everyone down.
Yeah, again, it's a thing of like just practicality for running a game smoothly.
Mhm. Well, I can think of my favorite encounters.
Oh yeah,
One of
I'd love to hear that.
one of my favorites. Well, the first one that comes to mind is just purely because I um love how it's the tongue monster. I love the tongue monster. Okay, no, I don't know. I just love the tongue monster. And I love the tongue shack, and I love the fact that I don't know. It kind of like I really enjoyed that first combat with the cabin and us snaking
Hmm.
around, and then Grizzly just going through the front. But
Oh
an
yeah.
actual
Oh,
oh
just as the
yeah
thing, that's supposed to be Bluto, by the way. That's
oh
how Bluto gets rewritten.
oh okay
Bluto. Why don't?
Uh, in base Curse of Strahd, he like kidnaps a kid for a
Oh,
weird
the
reason,
Dusk Elf
which is
kid. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
really weird. So she essentially was like, all right, he made a deal with the dark powers,
That makes
and
sense. Oh,
and the
that's right.
kid is
He's
there.
gonna sacrifice him to the lake to get
Hmm.
the fish to come back
Yep.
because. Yeah. Okay. I remember that now.
Mhm.
Mm, yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that's who Tongue Monster was.
Nice.
So, but like I have like a legit answer too, and the legit answer is, and this is not just because I got to jump in the eye, which was really fucking
Hmm.
cool. Thank you for that. But I really enjoyed that combat because of the fact that it was in the middle of the lake,
Hmm.
and I feel like putting things in the middle of like water gives them um like uh an extra urgency almost,
Hmm.
and especially the fact that the water wasn't something that we really wanted to go into. I don't remember if we
Yeah.
I don't remember if there was a reason that we didn't want to, or if it was
It
just
was
because it was
gross blood
gross.
water that had weird
Yeah.
flesh growing out of it.
But I do remember like it gave it a sort of urgency that like we could stand on our little boat or we could
Hmm.
stand on the giant eye.
Hmm.
So I just I really like I enjoyed the fact that it gave it sort of like this like you have to think about where you are more than in uh your average combat,
Hmm.
I feel like, because you know, you could be standing on the wrong side of the eye, literally. And so, I don't know. I just really enjoyed the urgency that the being in the middle of the lake added.
I had fun setting up that encounter. I think that was probably one of the more Chloe original things. They touch on the idea of like that lake being corrupted, and I was like, all right, let's expand that.
Mm-hmm.
To a giant eye. Oh, that's
Giant
pretty.
eyeball.
Giant eyeball.
You know,
That was really cool.
I liked the encounter we had. The first encounter we had in Arkenvold because with the with the Dead Knights, because in other
Mm.
times I've played this campaign, that has never gone well. It was ugly. Second time I played, it was almost a massacre against us. We almost we were stupid and got our asses kicked. First time was not even pleasant to us, and we were an experienced party of 8 people, and they proceeded to kick our ass because we were stupid. And yet we somehow did it to the point where we didn't have a fight with them. And everything went okay. It was amazing, and it was mostly because of Grizzly being the kind general fellow he is.
Yeah, so many nat 20s
I
Mm-hmm.
exchange social encounters.
I was totally invested in Grizzly being 8 charisma, 8 intelligence the whole time, and ultimately being like high strength, like 20 strength, 20 con, blah 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 blah. But the way it worked out was just like, well, nobody's really good at the social stuff, so I guess I'll have Grizzly. Okay, yeah, Grizzly manages to convince somebody of something, and it just got to the point where I was like, all right, I gotta start bumping this up
Mm-hmm.
mechanically. It
I
just
thought
makes too much
that was the
sense.
best possible outcome was for our face to turn it. We need a face, and so
Nah.
now we're yeah, right.
Yeah. Yep. Because I think
was
originally we
so
were supposed to have a
Barovia.
bard. I think was like one of the prospective characters, and then the
Oh
player had to
yeah,
drop out.
Birdie
Mm-hmm.
played a bard, but
That's
Mm-hmm.
what it was. Yeah,
she's
yeah,
yeah, she had to, she could only play the first session.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was kind of funny when like Trior was like came in as like a pixie fairy
Very.
fairy. I was like oh, okay, they're reasonably charismatic. It's like, well, I mean, assuming
No.
you put the points into it. Dean
Yeah.
is playing a rogue. Rogues are fairly well, no, okay. Well,
No, yeah.
Gal's playing a
no.
cleric. Clerics, okay, well, all right. So
Yes, the cigarette smoking fairy is so charismatic.
Yes, buddy. Birdie played the very first session, and then she had to drop out because I think because she worked early on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she
Yeah,
had a
her.
work schedule
Yeah,
change.
and
Yeah.
so yeah, she was starting a new work schedule, and so she couldn't
Ooh.
play late on Mondays.
Who still has the little birdie dolly in character? Because we get like we didn't we
I
wake up
put-
and dirty birdie
Yeah.
turned into a dolly.
I
Mhm.
put the
Yeah.
little doll in my backpack, and I
Okay.
mean, so Dina still I think probably just like takes it out and like maybe give does little role play with it, like, oh hi, how are you? Well, I'm a doll. How do you think I am?
Ooh, Baldur's Gate 3. I forgot that's coming out.
I am excited for Baldur's Gate 3.
I need to-
There's going to be a Mind Flayer horror.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
I almost had
it-
a Mind Flayer encounter in here.
No.
Where would that have been? Grizzly would have been safe.
There was
I would have been like entranced immediately.
I think so part of the design like that I was thinking for what are the dark power associated monsters? I went for aberrations specifically, which Mind Flayers are part of.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So like that one guy who was in the bedroom next to you, Geralt, I was like, well, you just left him here. He's gonna be all warped and be. It wasn't a Mind Flayer. It's again something from Van Richten's, but they're like Mind Flayer adjacent.
In the bedroom next to us.
Yeah, there was a guy who was there.
In the Amber Temple?
But
No, in the castle the first time you went.
Oh right.
Oh,
Oh,
Grizzly
Yeah.
Grizzly doesn't
Yeah.
remember that guy in the slightest. Neither does Ben.
Y'all rolled really bad at trying to persuade him and incite him. So y'all had no idea what was going
I
on.
remember him. I remember him.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yes, he was in the room that originally in the original module, I think, is occupied by the young lady from the town of Barovia, who like went off to the castle to go meet Strahd because she's like
Mhm.
weirdly infatuated with him or something.
Mhm.
I think that's where
Yeah.
that's the room she's in the original module. That makes sense. Okay,
Yeah, he is that same character.
Yeah, that's when we were in the library, right? And we started
gotcha.
Yes.
wandering around.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I was like, y'all left him there. I'm gonna have him. I don't know. I was gonna have you talk to
Yeah.
him, and then tentacles burst out of his
The
head.
epilogue. The epilogue is Geralt was.
Oh gosh, does that mean
subsumed
he's
by
still in the
darkness.
castle when Arena goes back? That's
Uh,
now. Now,
I mean,
Sorry,
They
they
Rena.
probably take him home at this point.
She's got this. It's okay.
now that would be an interesting lead into like a sequel.
Yeah.
No,
She's
Mind Flayer's
she's
bad.
legit Pally now. So.
Yeah, Mind
think if
Flayer's
there
not
w-
good.
Yeah, I think if there was a sequel, it would be. Because like you didn't destroy the dark powers. Like Barovia is fine, but like there
Oh,
are
yeah.
definitely other
Yeah.
people who would be happy to make deals for power
Right.
and who have emotional regulation issues.
Yeah, like the werewolves. We didn't really deal much with them,
Right.
and they're in charge of Valakia now too. So that's an interesting dynamic.
The Watcher House people are in charge of Palaki.
Oh, I thought that was the
Uh,
werewolves.
Were they werewolves? That was
They-
that was the sisters, right? And they
Yeah,
wanted us to help their brother.
Yes, the dad was working with the werewolves to throw a coup, and then y'all help
Oh,
them
so
throw
they
a
weren't
coup.
werewolves, but they.
They were not werewolves. They were working with the werewolves,
Oh, I
and
see. Okay.
Oh, I think we just assumed they were werewolves because we saw werewolves going into the house.
I think
nah,
that's my assumption.
Yeah.
yeah, they're doing a thing because like you ran into the werewolf early on, and I was like, okay, I need a way to bring it back, and like otherwise they're all the way on the like other end of the map,
Yeah.
and you don't run in, and it's actually really hard to run into them otherwise. So I was like, I'm gonna bring them to you.
So yeah, there could be like a power vacuum. And the
Valaki
werewolves.
They're
is
in the vacuum. The dogs run away from the vacuum.
Yeah, that's you need the power vacuum to scare the werewolves away.
Ah, right. Mm-hmm. They bark at it.
there, and again, there were enough werewolves that he could have brought them in, but you know, again, enough stuff going on in the game as it did.
Mm-hmm.
And
That
one fight
actually
was scary enough.
that actually brings up one of my gripes with the original Curse of Strahd module is
Mhm.
like, so you've got this whole like power dynamic thing going on with the werewolves, and like you kind of get, it's kind of the same problem you have with any part of the module, which is you run into something like any component of the module for the first time. Unless you're metagaming it, you don't know how that ties in, so you kind of just
Mhm.
you move on. And then later on you find like, oh, this is a thing that is important somehow, and you might connect it to the people you've already met or the thing you've already seen. You might not, and so you end up with like this thing where it's like, okay, well, we like for the skull for Argynvostholt, it's like, okay, you either
Mhm.
go to the castle first or you go to Argynvostholt first. Either way, you're like, okay, there's a dragon skull, we don't know why it's important, or there's this castle, they're looking for a dragon skull, we don't know where one is. And then if you happen to find the skull in the castle and recognize that that's the dragon skull you need to get it out of the castle and get it back to Argynvostholt. Or you need to see the thing, go to Argynvostholt, realize that you need the skull, go back to the castle and get the skull. And it's this very, like, it's a very awkward and, in my opinion, not terribly fulfilling, like, quest design that you see in a lot
Mhm.
of video games, where it's go to this place to get this thing, and then to bring it back to this place, and then from there you have to go back to the other place. It's, I really don't like that particular element of the module.
You get
I
that quite
actually,
a bit in here, and I agree. It's frustrating. It's almost like a forced sandbox. We want
Mm-hmm.
you the illusion that this is a sandbox, but actually it's not, and it becomes really frustrating because you don't want to go back to Castle Ravenloft twice.
Yeah,
Even
not
though there
unless you
one
have
back
to.
technically.
Yeah,
We could because we were strong enough to go back and pull that off, but honestly, not really. No, you shouldn't.
I would have let you just fight that big, Draco Lich and then fix a lighthouse. So we're like, maybe not. It looks
Oh,
scary.
yeah, no. Draco Lich bad, especially at our levels.
You could have survived, and convinced the Revenants to help. It would have been possible.
Hey,
um,
we killed your god. You better help us out. That's usually not the best position to argue from.
oh man, I was so tempted to have Grizzly go Paladin levels after that. Like I was right there, but ultimately I was just like, I don't know, I don't really see him being a knight, which is why he was kind of like looking for every opportunity to like pass the sword off to someone else that would be better for it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think Isabel was a good choice in the end.
Yeah,
So
probably. Yeah. All right. So I think I actually got through all the questions. Like, I wanted to. Do any of you have any last burning questions before we wrap up?
Nah, I think we got it.
yeah, I got to mine.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me see if I have any more secrets. I think I told you all the secrets. I feel like there's one more thing. Oh well, I guess it will be a mystery forever.
I have one last little thing I want to say really quickly.
Hmm.
Trior, every time I look at your the mini that you designed, I think he's sticking his tongue out. I don't realize
Oh
that
my god, I did too!
it's a cigar, right?
Whoa!
It's a
I
cigar,
also
yes.
thought it was a tongue.
I thought it was a tongue for the longest time. I thought he was flying around. I was like, that's such a weird
Yeah.
choice, but okay.
Nope, it's a cigar. It's just the way the angle of the picture was taken.
That's funny. All right, that was like
Amazing.
the biggest like Easter egg of the entire series. It's been staring us in the
Mhm.
face the entire time. So
Mhm.
It's not a tongue, it's a cigar.
Yep. Mystery solved. All right. Well, it's time to do my final wrap up as GM, at least. I'm Mike will have some things to share, but I have been the GM and host for this for our game of She is the Ancient, our genderbend module of Curse of Strahd. You can find me on Instagram, and I guess I realized I made it's also my Discord name too, Chloe Serena, and I have a Twitch at Chloe_Serena. Someday I'll get the non-underscore version. Yeah, and I will actually be here next Monday for a new game, but I will wait for Mike to explain that. In the meantime, Ben, who are you and where can people find you?
hi everybody, Ben Ravensdale. I played Grizzly Bottoms and enjoyed every minute of it. Kind of sad to see the whole thing go, but all good stories must come to an end. You can find me a few different places. You can find me on Twitch every once in a while. It's rare these days, but it's Ravensdale_publishing. I'm actually looking at starting up a Twitch stream sometime here soon on that channel, so check it out. But you can also find me here on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern for Dragon Age, and Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for Public Access, which is a really cool game. We're only in our third session, so check it out this Thursday if you're available. You can also see me on YouTube. It's The Transverse is the name of the channel, and I'm doing a superhero RPG that I'm GMing called Vigilantes Union Local 13, using the very awesome Marvel Saga RPG system. I highly recommend it. And starting in September, I'll be in a Mutants and Masterminds YouTube series as well. More information on that once it's all available, but just a little teaser, FYI. Oh, actually, sometime in the very near future, Chloe and I'm going to be doing a Marvel Saga RPG that Chloe's going to be playing in. So that'll tie into the Vigilantes Union thing. So check that out too. But thank you very much for joining us, whether you're just catching this wrap-up party or you joined us for the entire series. We really appreciate your support. Thank you very much. Lupine.
I am Lupine. Hi. I was everybody's favorite spicy little rogue Dina. And you will be able to find me in the immediate future. On Wednesday nights, I am over on the Lovecraft Tapes Twitch channel, and because I'm a member of the podcast, it's a Call of Cthulhu actual play, and we record every Wednesday night. Incidentally, I say every Wednesday night, and we're not recording this Wednesday night, but okay, whatever. We live record on Twitch, and then our GM Jeremy edits and puts it out as a podcast. So you can find that in podcatchers everywhere, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, that kind of thing. And that happens every Wednesday night at 9 Eastern. And then once a month, and I forget when this one is coming up. I think it's August 12th. Is the next Fernway. It's a game called Fernway, obviously. It's Wild Beyond the Witchlight 5e, D&D 5e. And that's over at the Real Payment of Gaming Twitch. And I'm saying a lot of links and not giving them to you because all of that information is on my link tree that I just posted. And that has all the links to the Twitch channels, the Lovecraft tapes, and Lovecraft tapes is different. And Real Moon of Gaming, and also the YouTubes, and then the Lovecraft tapes website and stuff like that. And also at my link tree, you can find a form where you can leave me a note, and please do drop me a note and just say hi, because I really like it when people say hi. Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, I'm Mike Leader. You can find me online pretty much everywhere as Dr. Fusion, Fuzion. I pretty much do my playing online here, and it's been wonderful playing this game. I'm glad I got asked to join, and it's been a wonderful experience since day one. So I'm really jazzed to be here and do that. And somehow I talked myself into taking this spot to replace this game after we finished. So next Monday night, I'm starting a game that most folks don't know. The game is called Fringeworthy. The game is 40 years old this year, and it's the first of its kind for role-playing gaming. Back in the 80s, of course, everything was first of its kind of. But it's a multiverse setting where Earth finds ancient alien pathways to different worlds, different Earths, and they send out teams of specialized people who actually can pass through these portals and even see them, because most folks can't. Only 0.005% of the human population can see them and access them. And so it tends to be a really wacky assortment of characters. I think in this group we have a failed extreme sports character. She just can't win a competition to save her life. But she's good at this. She's just not good at winning. We have a criminal auto mechanic who is serving on a prison term and using this thing to get out of jail. And we have, my brain is shutting off mid-thought. We have an artist played by Chloe.
It's me. I'll be a graffiti artist.
And the new player just joined us this week is Leslie. She's playing a not so great Air Force colonel pilot. So we'll see how that pans out.
Not so great is not so great at being a pilot, or not so great from a different perspective?
Not so great as a military person.
Ah, okay. Surprising that they get as far as being a colonel. Now I'm curious.
We haven't decided on the rank yet, but that was the original joke. It's like, you can't be a colonel.
Oh, okay.
But great pilot, just bad at military.
She makes really good fried chicken.
Han Solo. Got it.
Kind of, yeah. But they get to go out and explore the multiverse, and there's a huge story behind it, which you can read on my link tree, and so you can get a feel for what the world is like, sort of. I don't give away too much there, and you get to experience this thing from their perspective starting next week. So we'll be here starting at 7 p.m. Chloe is the only returning player. We have 3 brand new people to streaming on this channel. To meet Bob Richardson. He's done some work in the gaming industry. I played one of his games. And trying to convince myself you're running this channel. Yes, he's one of the co-creators of Spirit of 77.
Nice. Very cool. I like that game, actually.
Fantastic, fun game, and I
really
do think
is.
I should run on this channel sometime. His friend Brennan, who has some experience playing Fringeworthy from ages ago. I think he's my age. And I mentioned Leslie. She's new to gaming on this channel too, but I've known her for years through D&D Adventures League. She's an incredibly fun and strange person, so I think she'll fit in just nice with us all. So that's it. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week, and hopefully not crashing and burning as a GM.
You'll do great.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it. I get to be on the player side next week.
Well, Chloe gets to drive me crazy now.
Oh, wait, that means I can tune in by malevolence for Chloe.
Yes.
Yes, you
Oh
sure
no!
can.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Chloe, I would just like
do
to point
you
out
know how many channel points I have?
How many do you have?
Actually, no, I have 10.6 because I bought a bunch of malevolences and
I'm
benevolences.
just warning you now, Chloe. I have 42,000 channel points.
All right,
God.
all right. Well, I think I level up if I fail rolls. So,
Yeah,
Do you level up if you die?
I mean, well, that's the hard part.
That's
I didn't mention the system we're using. We're using the basic system, which is called Cthulhu, with Cthulhu kind of scraped off, and so it's a very deadly system. I mean, it takes 7 points of damage. Well, I'm dead, and your hit points don't go up. It's a very dangerous system to play, but it's a highly skill-based thing. It's a little more crunchy. I'm not really leaning to the crunchy part. I wanted to have a good skills section, which a lot of games don't really have. Can't use 5th edition because the skills aren't all that great in 5th edition. I really couldn't find something, because I would love to use PBTA and a bunch of other great systems, but they don't kind of match what I want to do with skills for this game, because that was the focus of the original. And
one of the things I like with Fate is you can stretch it out into a greater skills list, but then it makes the tree system that they use weird. So it's
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I opted against it. I mean, Fate would have been
Mm.
great. Just makes it so much easier to run it. Boom,
Yeah.
done.
I
This
think we
is a
did
bit more
talk about
crunchy.
fate explicitly
Oh, it's a good
as an
system.
option.
Yeah, and it would have been a good idea in many ways, but I didn't think that it would match the skills section of what I wanted to do. It had made the game even more cinematic, which it really it's kind of crunchy for a reason.
Mm.
You're in a survival. It's a survival game. You're hundreds of miles from anyone who can possibly help you. You don't have the skills to survive. So if you're bleeding out, you may die. If your compatriots can't actually properly bandage your wound, or you're on a hostile alien planet. Yes, hostile alien planet. You're even further from home, and so it's got a survivalist and exploration nature to the game. Yeah, there's horror mixed in too, but really I think that that hardness of being in a place it's unfamiliar, unforgiving, and whatnot will definitely uh, make players think about what they're doing a bit more. Isn't like D&D, like, yeah, well, just heal me. That's not how that works. Healing in this game sucks. All right, you did first aid. Get a D3 points back. That's for the week. The week?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Well,
make no guarantees about how much thinking I'll be doing, but I will be playing.
Oh, so you're playing Grizzly. Okay.
Hmm.
kinda not. But yeah,
Chloe, I am in your chat, posting your cat.
but yeah, definitely. If you all turn out next week and give it a listen, I think you'll enjoy what we've got. It's a really unique setting, and I promise to scare the hell out of the players.
All
They
right.
have.
Well, thank you. Did you say where people can find you yet?
Oh, actually, yes. I did. Did I post it?
Yeah,
I
I
did
thought you
post. I
posted.
posted my
Yeah.
link tree in the chat. Like I said, you can find information about me.
Okay.
You can reach out to
Perfect.
contact me. There, all my social media, all that fun stuff. And friends are there too.
All right. Well, I
I mean, deadly.
suppose it's
We'll see
awesome.
you
I
there, Billy.
suppose it's time for me to wrap this up for the very last time. I have loved I have loved this game. Thank you, my players, for playing. It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful having you and your characters, be here to help build this world with me. Thank you to all our viewers and everyone who has participated and especially contributed malevolence to make things more exciting. Yeah, I'll be back next week, but I will certainly miss, doing this and this group that we have here.
You'll
All
miss
right, well,
this
I hope
game a
that
lot.
y'all have
Yeah.
a good night. And, but be sure to come back for more new adventures on the Stolen Fires Twitch.
Thanks for joining us on this same bat time, same bat channel for so long, everybody. And for the final time, farewell.
And watch out for tongue monsters.